Welcome, one and all, to the K.O.E. Nation, folks. It is I, the man of the hour, the man with the power, the man that makes the other podcast cower, the prince and potentate of the political parlance, the lord of the Scottish Highlands, one handsome man if I do say so myself, your king of extreme, Phil K.O.E. Welcome back. It is great to be back, folks. My goodness, it has been quite a hiatus, but folks, it was necessary because I, as the king of extreme, as many of you know, have the Prince of Extreme upstairs who's getting ready for bed because the Queen of Extreme is putting him to bed. So, but folks, this is all necessary. But we also this evening have a very, very special guest, folks. He is an attorney so good. He's an attorney so good that he could get light fishing with hand grenades reduced to just lighting off fireworks before the 4th of July. He is one of the finest attorneys in all God's creation. He is the man for you, the man from wearing the hat of BYU, the one, the only, Nate Dallon. How we doing, sir?
Phil, as is always the case, your intros should just be the show. I mean, I think we can shut her down now. It's all downhill after that introduction. I'm doing well, Phil. It's been far too long. I think the last time we talked, your hair was a slight different color, and I had a little more than I do now. I think that the years and the tread is starting to wear on both of us, Phil, which is all right. That's how life's supposed to be.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're falling apart. We're losing the warranty on all of our parts, basically. Yeah, like I kind of joked that like I have the placebo effect of hair. I can like kind of lie to myself that there's hair there for maybe a few more years. It's like I'm about ready to tap out to glasses. I can lie to myself about these for about another year, where I don't need them all the time. But we're getting there. We're getting there. But well, Mr. Dallon, how have you been, sir?
Well, things in my world are a booming. So what Phil failed to mention is my area of specialties.
I was about to say,
speciality
to the folks at home who may not know you.
Yeah, I'm an immigration attorney, and I don't deport people. I try to keep them here. I try to get them work permits and social security cards and green cards and citizenship and the whole kit and caboodle. So that's my area, and I think everyone can agree I'm on the battlefront of something. However you want to describe that battle, I'm right there in the trenches. And so things are a booming. I started my own shop back in 2021. I've been doing immigration work from 2014 till 2021 with another guy. And then a couple of us peeled off, started our own place, and we're off to the races. Never been a time in American history to be as hopping in the immigration land as right now.
You know, I was about to say, like, when it comes to Trump, you're not sure if he's going to be cutting in on your gig or giving you job security from day to day. You know, it's got to be a little like that unsureness has to be. Well, I suppose the unsureness would be a level of job security anyways.
No, that's right. I mean, people say things like, well, what does this mean for you? And the answer is things go up, things go down. It ultimately doesn't matter. We're able to do things anyway. I had sent Phil a couple of graphs. We don't need to look at those right now. I mean, we can pull those up later if you want, but I'll just tell you today, well, as of the end of 2023, the U.S. Census Bureau thinks there are 24.5 million non-citizens living in the United States. So now I don't exactly know their count on that. I think that includes green card holders and visa holders, right? So not everybody in that 24.5 million is illegal, but a fair chunk of those folks are illegal. You've heard different numbers, but the Census Bureau sort of agrees. It's up there. It's not a small number. And then, of course, a lot of those folks are married to citizens, have citizen kids, a bunch of other things are going on. And so just the population that we're talking about is so big. I think that's what really gives me job security. And then policy then just becomes, the flavor of the day. I mean, even the Democrats would whipsaw me all the time as to what we're doing. For a while, it's incredibly loose. Then for a while, it's incredibly, strict. I kind of think that we might see something similar. I don't know. You can tell me if I'm wrong about this, Phil, but I actually think that President Trump is going to be able to declare more or less victory on the immigration question. The border, as you tweeted at me a few days ago, has reached probably a 2-decade low. I don't know if the border's been this quiet in the last 20 years. It's basically silent. Maybe you could find a time like in the 60s where it was even quieter.
I was about to say, I gotta give Tom Homan has somehow figured out a way to just be the border. Okay, yeah. Everybody so much that at my son's dedication, somebody who was dating somebody from my wife's family, he's from Scotland. And this guy's worried. Okay, he's like, I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to stay or not. It's like, well, yeah. Okay, all right. Well, I didn't know the worry was quite that deep there. But yeah, Tom Homan, when I listen to that guy talk, I'm like, woo, boy, yeah. I'm glad I was born here. Otherwise, I'd have to deal with this guy. Oh my God.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, just think for a minute though. So the border goes completely quiet. Let's assume that President Trump and Tom Homan continue to just roll for the next 18 months, and they really find all the bad elements out of the immigrant community and expel them. Let's just assume that the mass deportations occur over the next 18 to 24 months. Let's say by midterms, you can really declare all right, guys, we did it. We found basically all the bad elements. I don't know how many deportations that'll end up being. Let's just give it a number like 900,000, a little shy of the million that he's talked about. You say we've deported 900,000 people. The border's been basically quiet for 2 straight years. What is Captain Art of the deal? What's his next move? To me, it seems pretty obvious that the next move is we got the bad ones out. The good ones are here. Let's try to figure out some sort of non-citizenship path so that all these folks can come out of the shadows, work on farms, work wherever, and live their lives. And we're going to be just fine. I could be wrong about this. I know that there are some Magistanians who kind of feel that a bigger round of expulsion and then anything that even sniffs of amnesty is just a total non-starter. But I mean, you've heard Trump, Elon Musk and some of these guys, they kind of talk like, once we clean house, we're going to extend a bunch of green cards, right? And so I'm just interested to see what happens. I tell my clients, look, if you're not one of the bad ones and you can survive 24 months, situation could change real quick.
That's it. So basically, all right, you just gotta hunker down and get past the midterms is what is generally made, because
I really believe that. Now, the thing that would blow this up, Phil, is if more Tren de Agua, more cartel activity on the American side of the border, that could blow that up, right? If Trump can't sort of declare victory and say mission accomplished, well, then the mission's not accomplished. But if we get to the point where the number of criminals, the number of cartel people walking around the country really does start to bottom out, and then the number of people crossing the border remains crickets, well, then I think that Trump's instinct is declare mission accomplished, start moving towards getting these people into some sort of legal status so that they can work and whatever, and then set up a new immigration system for the next 100 years. I mean, he's in a position where if he wanted to do something like that and sort of set policy for the next 4 generations, I think he could. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I think that is a more likely scenario than many people want to admit.
Because I could see that, because the hardcore MAGAs wouldn't be all that happy. The hardcore Democrats aren't going to be happy that a single person got deported. And then basically, depending on how brutal the midterms are one way or another, Trump's like, well, okay, since we've got divided houses here, because let's be frank, from what I'm looking at, if you made me if you made me bet a silver dollar on it, okay, on how the midterms are going to go, the Republicans are going to quite easily hold on to the Senate. But the House, look forward to very slim House elections for the foreseeable future.
I agree with this.
It's just going to be so if the Democrats take the House, they're going to definitely be wanting some sort of that. You got to give them something to go back to their people.
And actually, Phil, you could take this even farther and say inside of the Trump coalition, if that's even the best term for it, because I actually think this coalition will outlive Trump. I don't think it's actually unique to Trump in the person. Yeah.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. To me, I think there's actually a lot of connective tissue, even though the two people don't really like each other all that much, between the Ron Paul love revolution and Donald Trump's election in 2016. Okay. I think there's a lot more crossover there. And
you could say it even more strongly, Phil. You could say something to the effect of what are the principles of this current movement? We could say it's patriotism, right? It's America first. I think that has to be one of the pillars. Maybe it's not number one on the list, but it's not number one. It's number two. Number two would probably be a cultural movement, right? The cultural movement piece to this is harder to describe in just sort of a few words. In some ways, it's easier to describe as what it's not, right? And so it's not elite. Some people like to call it populist. I don't even know if that's the right term, Phil. I don't know. If you crack open your daughter's American history book and it talks about populism, I don't know if this moment qualifies. But instead, it might be a cultural movement that is against our current version of the elites. We don't like elites who forget what gender is. We don't like elites who are anti-patriotic in the way that we teach at school. We don't like elites who are anti-God. We want to feel more comfortable in our faith, right? I don't know how to describe that, but to me, that's not just populism.
It's a rejection of the modern secular order.
Yeah, right. So again, maybe defining it in what it's not is the better way. Because if I just said it's sort of a wave of traditionalism, well, I think that's somewhat true. I haven't seen the Catholic conservatives and Catholic evangelicals be on the same side, hooked arm in arm to such a degree, but it's because of what you just described. Right? I mean, the papists are hooking up arms with the evangelicals because really the moment is calling for a rejection of not just a secular state, not just the secular culture, but almost an atheistic secular culture, right?
Yes. Well, it's the idea that all the religions are allowed to exist in this marketplace, if you will, where your ideas can be indulged, but no more than your own personal ideas, and they can't ever affect the secular society, which does hold complete sway, which has been the case for our Western order ever since the end of World War II. And so it's been sort of a rejection of that entire system. Not like you said, you've got Catholics and evangelical. I mean,
even the Mormons
I have been doing some research. To borrow a term, creedal Christians are all locking arm together. Yes, I have been doing my research. But yeah, they're it's when you got those two groups together, you have a voting block. You can win elections with just that group.
No, that's right. And so if you mix a little bit of America first, a little bit of this new cultural moment, and then I think that the third rail to this would be working class Americans. And when I say working class Americans, what do I mean? I mean farmers. I mean folks who work manufacturing. I mean folks who work in the service industry. So I'm talking, if you just pull up to a random McDonald's employee, are they team blue or team red? They're team red.
Yep.
Team blue has promised a lot of things to working class people for our entire lives, Phil. And frankly, have they delivered? No. So you have this America first, this cultural movement that's harder to describe. You have this working class block. And Phil, guess what? Immigrants love all three of those categories. I mean, I've said this for a long time. Where was the biggest explosion of Trump support of any demographic group in the country from 2016 to 2024?
Hispanics.
What's number two? It's the Black church. The Black church has slowly been waking up, and they are leaving team left. And guess what? if you just go look at illegal immigrants, there have been a few people with the audacious project of asking illegal immigrants, if you could have voted, who would you have voted for? Phil, who wins that election?
The Donald.
The Donald wins that election. The people love him, and he actually loves them back. The problem is that the illegal immigration problem, the southern border, runs counter to these three pillars. Well, I guess pillars 1 and 3, as I've described them, right? So it's not really America first, because a lot of these folks send remittances back to home country. Like, they cause a lot of problems for America First policy. And arguably, although I would argue it's overstated, the working class people do not appreciate being undercut with their wages. I believe that's a real phenomena, but I think it's way overstated. I think it's far more subtle than people realize. But nonetheless, they are on rails 1 and 3. They're against the project, but they're all in on rail 2. Go find me a blue-haired, left-wing Hispanic working out in a field. They're going to look at you and say, I'm for the Virgin Mary, right? They're credo Christians overwhelmingly. And even inside of the Islamic community, so your Muslims, even though there's a lot of things we could talk about there about assimilation and other things, but even inside the Muslim community, they were not showing up for Team Blue, right? They're not showing up for Team Blue. They are antithetical in culture to Team Blue all the way. Now, they might also be antithetical to the credo Christians. I mean, I want to be very clear, but at least for the moment, no matter who you look at, Asian Buddhist immigrants, who are they voting for? They're voting Team Red. I mean, so my point is that from Trump's perspective, if you can get the immigrant community, the border sealed, you can get all the bad elements out, and you can fix rails 1 and 3, bring some unity there. I think the immigrant population is actually part of the future for the current political movement. That's one of my radical takes.
Well, it will, in my opinion, that analysis will bear out, because I can't remember who dropped the stats, but they were going over some of the swings of Hillary Clinton in 2016 for Hispanic males to Donald Trump in 2024. And it was like literally like 40 points pro Hillary to 15 points pro Trump, or even higher than that. And I'm like, that kind of swing is devastating for a political party. Like, the Democrats are just basically trying to figure out, like, what do they even do for the next 4 years? Because,
well, by the way, what do they even do is right. This is why Schumer looks like a deer in the headlights. This is why Hakeem Jeffries has just become an insult machine, but doesn't actually say anything. It's because for most of our lives, Phil, or maybe even all of our lives, probably, I don't know what year you were born. You're probably an Xer, so probably all of your life, and for sure all of my life. But I think that we're in a situation where the Democratic Party had a registration advantage nationwide over Republicans, right? The working class in the early 80s until 2016 were solidly Team Blue, and had been even before my birth. That has started to change, and so now the Democratic Party has become the party of what? Neocons, the educated, and the wealthy. That's who's running that party. And so working class people, they still have the language. They have this like faux language of working class people, but they are the elites, and they're running the party as though they're being run by elites.
Yeah, I mean, like what you described as their leaders, that's also the people who are voting for them. That's about it. Is, the highly educated, the moneyed elites and neocons. Okay,
that's right.
That's that. Now, when I say highly educated, like I've often said that there are people that are educated beyond their intelligence. And we that may be a good chunk of that particular voting block. But in terms of the future for Trump, I think the midterms might be a little messy because Trump's not on the ballot. Trump's not really campaigning. Okay, but I think 2028, if Trump actually like nominates a successor and actually like gives his blessing to the next successor, that whether it be JD Vance or whoever it is, I think he's gonna just dominate whoever the Democrats put up, because Democrats, like, let me ask you, if you had to bet the house, who are they nominating in 4 years? Exactly.
I mean, the easy answer is Gavin Newsom, right? The easy answer is Gavin Newsom. But that's just because of process of elimination. Who else could do it?
I think on COVID, he's going to get trounced.
No, I agree. I'm not going to say he's going to win. I would just say I mean, we could probably go look at it right now on predicted and the betting odds. I bet they've got Newsom up at the top right now, but I'd give it like what, 15% confidence, like real low level of confidence on that. I'm with you. That party needs to figure out what its soul is, because getting back to this culture issue, the LGBTQ community will still overwhelmingly stay to the left. The atheistic, when I say educated, what I mean is the degree crowd, right? The folks who have degrees. I think it is actually a little bit pejorative to talk about the educated and the uneducated like they're part of two parties. Well, that kind of presupposes that the uneducated aren't smart or don't know what they're doing or something. I don't even like that. But the folks with all the degrees and the LGBTQ community and the atheistic community and some of the people who have really benefited from globalism, they're all going to be inside of one party. And the neocons, right? Let's say like security, the security state folks, they'll be in that party.
The folks who just love them some more. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
and I think,
how did that, wait, before we go, I have to, Nate, how the blanking blank did that happen where in our lifetime we went from the Republicans being the warmongers that almost led this world to ruin because of all the wars they wanted to start, to being the peaceniks, and the Democrats going from the anti-war left, and that evaporated the day Barack Obama got elected, and now they're the saber rattlers that are about to plunge us into World War III. How did that happen?
Well, the cynical response is there was never a peacenik party until Donald Trump. How many wars did the Democrats actually stop? Hillary Clinton voted for Iraq. The Democrats voted for Vietnam. The Democrats voted for like the Iran-Contra stuff eventually, right? Like it's one of those things where they would vote for it and then held press conferences about how terrible it was. Like, okay, was that really a serious peace movement? That's my question to you. I don't think that it was so much a change. It's just that the scales fell off. The people who are most interested in stopping wars abroad is the working class. So the working class got a lot of lip service from a party that wasn't actually interested in those things. I mean, Bill Clinton, how many air raids and troop deployments did he do without congressional authority? Yugoslavia, Rwanda, isn't he the one who bombed a Chinese building in like Croatia? Like these are all things. He did the no-fly zone over Iraq, which was basically an act of war without permission. I mean, the entire Clinton Foundation has been profiteering off of the war machine. Like I think that the better question is that how come the peace community put up with being silenced and only be giving, tokens and breadcrumbs for so long? I think that's probably the real question.
Unfortunately, like a part of me really wants to agree with you, because when I saw the anti-war left just vaporize when Obama was elected, it's like, okay, was this all just a cynical, we want to go after Bush thing? Like a part of me is like, I think, yeah, probably to an extent was, they just wanted something to go after Bush. And so their anti-war rhetoric was just that rhetoric. And that's unfortunately.
Yeah. They voted for the war and then complained about it. It's like, okay, well, that's a strategy that I think did work for many decades. So I guess I can't besmirch them, but
now we've got our new war that hopefully will be drawing down. And before we get kind of circle back to the border, since we're talking war here, Ukraine. I mean, like I know it's not exactly your area of expertise, but what's your general thought on that? I've been really curious.
So this is okay. Again, I have no special expertise. I'm not in on any phone calls. So I don't know. I don't know the personalities.
I don't know about that, Nate. They all call you. Don't. No,
actually,
we know.
When people talked about this Signal texting chain and how it was a scandal, I said the only scandal is I didn't get invited. If you're going to be inviting citizens into these things without security clearances, why wasn't it me? Why was it this guy Goldberg? That's the annoying part, is why wasn't it me? Why wasn't it Phil? If you're going to put some citizens in, Phil and I have things to say about this.
Yeah, my favorite meme about it was Elon looking all sad, going, "Wait, you guys have a side chat?"
Okay, well, here's the problem as I see it. Certain countries are more stable as empires. So I'm going to say this again. Certain countries are more stable as empires. I'm going to give you one that's I don't think it's very controversial.
England.
The Persian Empire was more stable then Iran is stable today, right? So the Persian Empire is Farsi speaking. It was either run out of Tehran or Baghdad, depending on the time, but it was run by the Persian people, which is predominantly Iran and chunks of Iraq and a few other places. The United States and the Western powers specifically broke up that empire, right? Because they don't like a unified, powerful empire as a counterweight, and instead intentionally keep things chaotic to make sure that the balance of power is always on Team West. So that's what I believe has happened in the Middle East. The Persians, by the way, are not the only possible solution. There have been Arabian empires in the past, but same thing. They need more territory to be stable. Imagine for a moment, we're Nebraskans, Phil. Imagine if Eastern Nebraska and Western Nebraska really had a divorce. Both would be worse off. We would both be worse off for that. So the Western Nebraska folks, I know they feel a certain way about Omaha. I know that there are conversations around coffee and donuts on a Sunday morning that complains about the libtards in Lincoln and the purple-haired people in Omaha. I know. But if we're being honest about it, Nebraska as a contiguous state is better off with having both of us there. If we needed to defend our borders, splitting Nebraska in halvesies would be a disaster. No, what Eastern Nebraska could not defend itself. Western Nebraska cannot defend itself, right? Lack of manpower to the west and lack of resources to the east. We need each other. We're more stable as this particular unit. If you're Iran and you're the Persian Empire, or you're Saudi Arabia, or if you're Turkey, those are the three historical powers in that region. You need to have a bunch of the geography in the fold in order to be stable. And the West has had an enormous incentive to keep those places unstable so that they don't have to have a huge military presence and fight big wars. They can just allow things to be unstable. Now, I think that's what happened at the breakup of the Soviet Union. So I think that the Soviet Union and Russia, the empire of Russia, is most stable when all of Ukraine, the Baltic states, chunks of Finland and Sweden, chunks of Romania, and even a little chunk of Germany, that geographic place is stable when it's under one regime. If it's not under one regime and it's broken up into little pieces, they're going to be inherently unstable. They're going to have a hard time getting along. They can't share resources, a bunch of other stuff. So if that's the case, now just go with this assumption for a minute. Again, I'm not super smart. People like to say that it was NATO encroachment that actually spurred Russia onto conflict. I think that's wrong. I think it was the moment that the wall fell and the West started splitting up the Russian Empire. It made all of those places unstable. The United States took some of those unstable pieces and flooded them with cash, free trade agreements, and security arrangements because they could not be stable on their own elsewise, right? So they push instability into Russia from the moment they win the Cold War. And now that the United States is starting to take a step back, in part because of incompetence, let's be honest, the prior administration wasn't super competent, invited a little bit of a conflict, right? While at the same time, the Trump administration is looking at this and going, why are we picking sides inside of a place like Ukraine when really there's no upside for us? If the Russian Empire reasserts itself, I could see why that's bad for Germany. But if it's a friendly Russian Empire to the United States, why is that really a problem? It costs us less. And heck, maybe we can cut a deal with Putin, right? So that's all the thinking on this. And so as the United States withdraws support from different regions of the world, the more natural, historic kind of situation in these geographic locations begins to reassert itself. So when you hear Putin, when he's talking to Tucker Carlson, when he's talking to his own media, he talks about the historic Russian Empire. He doesn't talk about the USSR, and he almost never mentions NATO. And that's for good reason. It's because if it wasn't Putin, I think other Russians would also say the world is a more peaceful and stable place when Russia is an empire versus when Russia is in little pieces and we're constantly in conflict with one another. So that's kind of my take. The United States is now, for the first time, reevaluating why are we shoving resources into these regions to maintain instability. Maybe it's time for stability. And I think that's actually Tulsi Gabbard's whole shtick. She's Team Syria because she thinks that a Turkey-Syria empire is the most stable situation for the Middle East. And it's not an Iran or it's not a Israel-led empire, right? So that's kind of my take on that. I don't know if you have. That was a lot of words. You can tell me.
No. I'll give my take here in just a minute. But Grow the Farm Up says, to be America's enemy is dangerous. To be America's friend is fatal.
Today it feels that way. That's true. I'll tell you though, ask the Japanese. They've been our friend. They remain our friend. They're doing great. Like it's not that complicated. I think the Canadians and the Mexicans have screwed this up, but that's another aside for another day.
My take is a little more simplistic than yours because you also got to keep in mind that crowd psychology is a part of it, so you can't overcomplicate it too much.
Sure.
Because I always keep in mind that economies, militaries, nations, those are all psychological engines. And my take on this is Russia's trying to go back to some version, and I said this the day of the invasion, that they're trying to go back to some version of Berlin Wall 2.0, where there's this little geographical spot, wherever it is doesn't really matter. Like where the spot is irrelevant. The fact that they just need the spot where we play political hopscotch around for 25 years. And they, in their mind, like in the Russian baby boomers' mind, they can make sense of the idea of that is the West being contained. They think it's like, okay, they're behind that wall, they're on the other side of that wall, the West is contained, they will move no further than that. And that's how, like, for I mean, I guess another word for Russian baby boomer would be Soviet, but like that's how they would generally view that. And so it doesn't even matter if it's a facile piece of Ukraine, so long as it's just some piece that they didn't have before. And that's kind of why I see this war as but it's really just not worth it. It's not been worth all the blood and the treasure that we've lost over it, because all we're doing is like we're fighting over a line on the map so people can have pride.
Well, I mean, I think that your position it tracks human psychology. I would just say that history indicates to me that if the war in Ukraine were to end tomorrow with the lines as currently drawn, that does not grant the stability I'm talking about, because the day after those lines are drawn, Russia does still not have access to European Union markets without heavy tariffs. They don't have access to Ukrainian population base, which is used to be, until all this violence, slightly younger, right, than the Russian population. They didn't have access to easy grain markets in the Ukraine, right? And they still wouldn't after those lines are drawn. So to me, I actually don't think that Trump is correct on this. I think his instinct makes sense, and I think that his instinct is good. But I think that the actual truth of the matter is that Russia, in order to be totally comfortable in its own skin, needs a little more empire for the prosperity of its own people, and arguably for the prosperity of the people inside that empire that they're acquiring anyway, right? That's one of the things, is you have to remember there are a certain contingent of Ukrainians who are comfortable with being part of the Russian empire, right? Because in a lot of ways, they'll be better off. So that's the only thing, is that I do agree there's a psychological component to this. There's no question, especially now that so much blood has been spilt. The idea that we could just expel the Russians from Ukraine at this point psychologically is a non-starter. But I do think that if Trump were to end the war tomorrow, no more material, the Europeans create the war, the security guarantee. If I'm Putin, I say no to the deal. I'm ahead. I'm finally actually winning the war. The border has moved a little bit to the Russian advantage. And I think he'll be better off, and the Russian people will be better off with a little more gains. And so I don't think he's done. And I think that, from my perspective versus your perspective, I think the possibility of conflict in the future is still high, unless you rewrite the whole board. If you, Phil, were to say, we're going to end the war tomorrow, and we're going to kick a couple of these countries out of the EU and create a new trading bloc with Russia that doesn't require an invasion. It's like a free trade zone. And we remove all the NATO weapons from right off of their border, they'd be calm. That would be true. But that extra layer of necessity, I don't think those countries are giving that up to the psychology of the moment, kind of to your point.
Yeah. Now, here's the problem. Well, for those countries anyways, is
reality is the problem.
If America says you're going to do it, you kind of have to do it. It's like, that's like, welcome to the big boy games here. But to me, it's like, okay, I have a daughter that's almost an adult. Okay. And so I very much worry about, like, okay, is her and her generation going to get marched off because of this stupid Ukraine conflict that should have been solved a long time ago? And so when you're talking about like their stability and what's possible for stability, like, so basically what you're saying is either a few extra countries drop out of the EU and make a trading bloc, or Putin just takes over all of Ukraine. And those are about the only things that would kind of satisfy him.
I think that's right. I think that you've just nailed it. And by the way, sadly for Europe, they've never had huge long stretches of stability, because guess who to the west also needs those same lands to be stable? The freaking Germans. And the Germans right now, they've been pussies for like 40, 60 consecutive years. And that's because the United States more or less took the strong arms of Germany and put them in slings and have let them atrophy. But if Germany decides to kick itself in the butt, abandon ship on a lot of the stupid that it's been doing for the last 60 years, go back to its nationalistic roots, Phil, how many times have the Germans found a way to crack parts of the Russian Empire? The sad news is that I don't think Europe can be stable unless Uncle Sam draws the lines. And that's a sucky situation. And to your point, here's what I think happens if we just left Europe tomorrow. Russia would get back its empire over the next, give it 5 years. At that 5-year mark, Germany will have truly rearmed. They'll be scared pissless. And then they will rediscover German nationalism and fully rearm. At that time, they'll start licking their lips and saying, wait, I think we're actually really good at killing Russians. We're actually really good at this. We've forgotten it. We've been in slumber for a long time. And then they're staring at each other. And then you have the potentials for a nuclear exchange. Not a big one. I'm not talking about like Berlin and Moscow will get nuked. I'm talking about artillery shells, tapped with uranium, making the boom boom 4 times bigger. But then that's one more little step. We cross that threshold. We're using small nukes in the field. How long before we make a worse decision as people?
So wait, so this time in the seemingly never-ending war between Germany and Russia, this time
Bavarians
around,
and the Ruskies,
the United States would be on the side of the Germans?
No, actually. So first of all, it depends who's in charge.
General Patton would be happy.
Well, that's right. The answer to your question is it depends, right? If Trump is in charge when all this stuff is happening, then he's going to do whoever gives us the best deal. So like, it's totally transactional in his mind. And by the way,
got the best real estate.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to get a Trump Tower in northern Russia, Moscow, and southern Russia, and in Kyiv. This is great. No, but all joking aside, right now, if you were to just take those 3 pillars we talked about before, which are America first, it's a cultural movement against secularism, and it is working class based. Who's a better natural ally, the Russians or the Germans today?
A lot of people would probably view that as Russia. In that, because
I think so too.
Now, I'll never forget, I read this on Twitter where somebody said, okay, as a German, I just want to be very clear that the world wants us to build a military, march across Poland, and invade Russia. I just want to write this down now in case there's any confusion in the future. Okay.
That's right. I mean, and if I were to criticize some of the things that Trump has said, this would be one of the criticisms. I would tell President Trump, if you are begging France and Germany to arm themselves to the teeth, then they will use their shiny playthings. They will also feel this impulse to reestablish empire. Right? I believe that the United States more or less turned off imperialism for anybody but us. We were still working on a financial imperialism. We were working on a globalistic imperialism. Our imperialism was sort of the weirdest because it wasn't for the benefit of its citizens. It was just the benefit of its elites or something. It was like a very confusing kind of imperialism. But nonetheless, it was a version of imperialism. If we decide to turn off our own imperialism, there's sort of this vacuum that will be refilled by the Europeans. And it doesn't stop there, Phil. You can look to Asia, you can look to the Middle East, and you have to start asking yourself the question, which empires will start to reassert themselves? I'll tell you what, the Japanese are real good at killing the Chinese. They're real good at that. And I'll tell you too, the Iranians and the Saudis, they're real good at killing each other. And the Turks are pretty good at ruling the Middle East. And so you just start, that's why history is such an important, little bit to this. You can kind of look back in time and say, what were the more stable, more prosperous empires in a state of nature without the U.S. dictating what's going to happen? History reasserts itself. That's kind of my take. Now, to get this back to, if you want to be a peace-loving American, you have a couple, luckily for the United States, we have a lot of options on the table. We can do J.D. Vance style isolationism. I believe that he is more on team, let the world burn. We just got to take care of our own. I actually do think Trump believes in a little bit of meddling. I think Trump has a little more, I want to go cut deals around the world. I want to be in the middle of all the action, right? He's got more of that kind of vibe to him.
I mean, the dude's trying to just take the Panama Canal, Greenland, and then out of nowhere, the Gaza Strip? What?
Right.
Yeah, you want to talk about some meddling. Yeah, that guy's
Trump has a little more of this like meddling kind of impulse to him. And I also think that other people around him outside of Vance, so I think the true hardcore isolationist peaceniks are Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, and the guy who looks like Voldemort.
Boy, you gotta be more
graduated from Duke, Stephen Miller.
Okay,
right.
Yeah, there we go.
And then inside of the intelligentsia that's around Trump, you can throw in Bannon, right? He's all in for that. RFK Jr., I'm sure, is of the same mind, right? These guys are the hardcore, like, we are not interested in one American bullet killing one person without serious cause, right? But then on the other side, you got Rubio, right? You've got Bessett from the Treasury Department. You've got Hegseth himself. I think Hegseth has shown he wants America to be kicking butts. And you don't be kicking butts if you're doing nothing, right? So these guys are more willing to go out and be active.
I get the feeling that Hegseth is going to be the guy that's like, he thinks it's better to ask forgiveness than permission from the president. Like, okay, all right, Mr. President, let's say that we bombed this island here. How mad would you be? Well, why did you do that? Sorry. Yeah, it's always better to ask forgiveness and permission from him. Now, he's a Marine, and so it's kind of funny that like some of the people that like hate Trump, but they're in kind of the neocon camp of folks that I kind of follow on Twitter. He's like their, other than this text thing, he's like their one like shining light of hope in the Trump administration. It's like, oh, okay, maybe a little bit of neocon, just kick butt goodness can make its way through. And I'm like, oh, okay, Pete, he's good, but he still serves at the pleasure of the president. So
no, that's right. Steve Bannon has said the most important conversations are going to be between these three factions inside of the White House. Steve Bannon is really leery of the techno oligarch guys. So we're talking Peter Thiel, David Sachs, Elon Musk, the PayPal mafia bros, right? They're kind of one faction of the party. And then there's still the militarily active in the world wing of the party. And then there's the true peace-loving wing of the party, right? And it's kind of broken up into those three groups. And Bannon thinks that the most important question for all of humanity, not just the United States, is which of those three groups is going to ultimately convince Trump and control policy. Because he thinks that it needs to be RFK Jr., J.D. Vance, and the peace-loving, America first, manufacturing, Christ-loving wing of the party. That needs to be who wins. It can't be the techno bros, and it can't be the guys who are still kind of war curious. And he thinks that's it. He's like, the only thing that matters over the next 4 years is out of those three groups, who's winning Trump's attention, who's winning that argument internally. And I find it to be fascinating. I don't know. That might be a little too simplistic, but I think there's some real insight there.
Now, to me, I'm kind of like between the peaceniks and the tech oligarchs. Like I don't mind either of them, just so long as the neocons are the ones who lose. Okay, like just so like guys, can we please work together?
On that topic, when you heard it was going to be Rubio, what'd you think? Be honest, Phil. Be honest. It's okay.
I was not thrilled when I heard about Rubio. I knew he was going to easily sail through the Senate, and he's Secretary of State, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay. When I was running for president, I realized that in order to be elected and allowed to keep my office, I was going to have to nominate the equivalent of Dick Cheney's floating brain in a jar at either the head of the DOD or the Secretary of State office. And so Marco Rubio is the fresh young face of Dick Cheney's floating brain in a jar. So I was like, okay, Trump, in order to not get assassinated, winky face, had to basically make it, you'll notice the bullets stopped flying at him after that, shortly thereafter. So Marco Rubio was his olive branch to the establishment,
the necessary poison in the administration.
Yep. That's that. Like, well, they won't blow up the room when Marco's in it. So
is he? Wait, are you insinuating that Marco's actually just a hostage in the White House?
I'm insinuating nothing of the kind, sir. But I see him as basically the olive branch to that neocon. Like they had to have a seat at the table whether we liked it or not because they're part of the party. Now, I'll never forget when my former co-host, he was one of those, I'm a moderate Republican and you guys can't win the election without me. And we totally won the election without any of them. It was hilarious. And so I was like, well, okay, guys, we need to give them at least a seat at the table, but they don't need to have a big one. So Marco Rubio, I don't suspect he'll actually he'll actually sit all 4 years as secretary.
Oh, fascinating.
Like, I think he's gonna find some hole to plug himself in somewhere in politics, or he's gonna quit 3 years in and gear up for his own run for president or whatever. So he's transparently ambitious, to be frank. Like, God love Marco Rubio, but it's not hard to see his ambition is to be sitting in Trump's chair eventually.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, those are good thoughts. I'm interested in those thoughts. All right. So to sort of swing this thing back around, let's talk about immigration again for a minute. So, oh yeah. Okay. So Phil, there's actually a slightly different, weird, goofy looking graph that's called labor tightness. Do you mind pulling that one up?
Okie dokie.
Yeah. Here we go. There we go.
Labor market
tightness index. So this is an index from 2001 to the year of our Lord, 2024. Okay. So this is a goofy graph. What does labor tightness mean? Well, what this means is what's the unemployment rate plus the number of job postings versus the number of people drawing unemployment checks, right? So you take all that kind of data, you stick it together, and you try to put it onto a stabilizing index. So this doesn't give you raw numbers. This is just telling you directionally which way is the data going. So you're going to see a couple of things that are, in my opinion, very interesting, Phil. And then we're going to jump over to the Southwest border apprehensions. So here's my thesis. So you challenged me on this topic, and you said open borders is a choice. That's a policy decision.
Yes.
And we have made the decision as a nation through the ballot to close the border. My response to that is human ingenuity trumps federal power every time. If people want to cross the border, they're going to cross the border. That's my thesis. Now, why is it then that we had this explosion during the Biden era? Because, by golly, we had an explosion during the Biden era. Is that truly just happenstance? Is that my argument? Well, not exactly, but pretty close. It is actually pretty close. So if we look at labor tightness, this is what this means. Does the labor market demand more workers or doesn't it? So we can take a look. What are the hard years if you just want a job? Oh, look, there's a little financial crisis between 2007 and 2008. Things start to get bad. Things bottom out. What is that? Beginning of 2010?
Yep.
So unemployment numbers and the labor market was loose. We call this loose. This was the worst time to be entering the workforce in American history. Well, you might be able to pick 1933, which was the worst year for employment during the Great Depression, and put it up against 2009. So if you entered the workforce in 2009, it was brutal. It was so hard to find a job. It was even harder to find a good living wage. The people inside of politics at the time were saying things like, we need a $15 minimum wage. We need all this stuff. $7.25 is just not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. Well, Phil, slowly but surely, The labor market tightens and tightens and tightens until at the end of 2014, it starts to flip. Now, we could ask why. That's a fine question. If you want to talk about that, we could talk about my opinions on that. But nonetheless, I think that the labor market does, in fact, flip. And we go from there are too many jobs and a job surplus to the exact opposite. I think that finally, working class people start to get some power back. And now we need more workers, more workers, more workers. President Trump starts to pick up on the power of the working class people, but it's already been building for them. So working class people become Team Trump. Trump enters the office, and then he sets the record, Phil, in 2019 for the lowest unemployment that we had ever seen. In Omaha, we got down to 2% unemployment in 2019. Many believe that 2019 might have been the greatest economic year in American history. Wages were up. Everyone was employed. The rich were getting richer, and the poor were having the best wage growth they'd ever had, right? At least not maybe ever, but at least in the last 60 years, in the post-World War II era. 2019 was, what did Trump constantly tell us? This is the best year for Black employment ever. And he was right. More Black men and women were employed with good, decent jobs in 2019 than probably at any other time in human history. And then what happens? COVID, the biggest self-goal in American history. We shut down the economy. Phil, what happens when you shut down the economy? A cliff occurs. So we create a totally unnecessary cliff, and the way that we tried to deal with it was by deficit spending and just giving everybody checks when they sat at home, right? Well, once we lift all of these shutdowns, what immediately happens? We go back to trend. But now we go back to trend with a lot of money in our pockets, and we create inflation. So suddenly, wage growth goes crazy, and then Omaha sets a new record in 2022. We get down to 1.89% unemployment. It's the lowest unemployment measure in the history of our region. So the Minneapolis Fed is in charge of us, and they said we've never seen a major metropolitan area have such low unemployment. If you were unemployed in Omaha in 2022, it's because you wanted to be, right? There were job signs everywhere. And Phil, if the market demands workers, what does the market get?
Workers.
It get workers. And so if you go to the next slide or the next little graph that I sent you, we'll see the southwest border apprehensions. So this is a good measure, not a perfect measure, of how many immigrants are entering the country. This is the one. So what do we see? This chart starts in 2016. So as soon as we start to have this vacuum of needing more workers, the immigrants start pouring across the border. Trump makes this the cornerstone and central piece of his campaign in 2016, and for good reason. But Phil, what happened to immigrants crossing the border from 2016? You see a dip. Trump year one, he does create a dip. He should get credit for that. And he did do that. He made that happen. He gets all the credit in the world for that little dip. Could he hold on to it? No, he could not. Why did he do family separation and remain in Mexico? It's because the trend starts to reverse on him mid-2017. So by 2018, apprehensions are back up nearly to Obama levels. That's when he creates Remain in Mexico. That's when he says we need to be more strict at the border, do family separation, all this other stuff. And then guess what? It continues to go up into 2019 because the market gets what the market wants. Government doesn't control markets. So more people come, more people come. We shut down the economy, Phil, and then what happens? No more immigrants. The COVID pandemic and the shutdowns told every Mexican we're closed for business. No one showed up because no one had a job. They couldn't get jobs. As soon as Biden comes into office, there's a lot of hot money because of the deficit spending. Market gets tight again, and it explodes until January 2024. Did Biden do anything different after January 2024 when all of the border apprehensions started to slow down? No, he'd ruined the economy, Phil. Biden is officially done wrecking the economy, and the first people to realize are migrant workers. And they say, oh, crap, the jobs are drying up. I'm not going to show up anymore. So when Trump rolls into office, he rolls into the weakest economy we've had in 20 years, and the border goes silent because the market is no longer demanding immigrants cross the border. If Trump fixes the economy, they'll start to come back. So that is my hot take for the day, Phil. Tell me I'm wrong.
Oh, you're wrong. Everything but the is, the ands, and the thes. Every word of it, my sir. No, I will say you do make a compelling case. I will say that. But when I say that our levels of illegal immigration are a chosen government policy, what I mean is what levels of friction are we putting up between somebody coming in and not? Now, a good example, and this I'm going to give this one as an example, Nate, is I guarantee you know more people who own a firearm than own a suppressor. Okay. Yes. Because with a suppressor, there's so much friction that most people, even like a gun guy like me, it's like, I'm not even going to bother because it's so much friction to even get it. Now, when under the Biden administration, when all you have to say is a certain set of words to the correct border agents, and we'll figure out in the next 15 to 20 years whether we're going to do anything about this or not. That's not a lot of friction. When Trump comes into office, more friction is introduced. Now, in 2020 here, that was a lot of friction that we introduced, Nate. We said, no, ain't nobody coming in. We don't care about nothing. We're closed for business. The border's closed. That's about as much friction as I can think of. And so you do make a compelling case about with Trump, he did actually have an increase despite the strictness of his policy. But then he cracked down on his policy and you do see a downtrend. Then COVID unfortunately, COVID kind of messes up both of our metrics here because you could make the case either way. It kind of bolsters your point and it bolsters my point. It bolsters your point in that, well, the economy was crap, so obviously they're not coming. And I'm saying, well, the fear was out of 10. Yeah. The fear was up to 11, so we freaked out and closed the border. And guess what? Nobody came across. And so that was... Unfortunately, that was a moment where the economy was bad, but also the fear was bad because you, Nate, with your facts and your statistics.
I know, I'm the worst.
To me, I was like, well, again, read the people, read their, what's going on in their minds, and that is kind of what I see. But look at the very end here, and you see these apprehensions drop. And like I said the other day, like Tom Homan was talking about. Here we go. Here's the next one.
Yeah. So this chart here includes once Trump's into office, and you see that bad boy bottom out. That's the Trump era. I mean, you are correct to say, yo, Nate, were the bottoms during Biden or Trump? Enough said. I mean, that is a strong argument.
I mean, now the thing is, sometimes the resistance can just be what people think is happening at the border. When people just, Trump's in, obviously it's going to be harder.
Yeah, that narrative alone counts. You're right about this.
And so that has a lot to do with it. But now the economy's just starting to recover, inflation's finally starting to cool the price of eggs is at least reasonable again. That seems to be a metric that a lot of people are holding to. So we'll see how this holds up. But like you said, if Trump can maintain numbers close to this, I think the Republicans will have a very good midterm and they'll sweep 2024.
This gets back to what we started talking off about, which is Trump makes the biggest immigrant baby face turn midway through. He came in a heel. He came in as the final boss. He came in with the people's elbow. And then by year 2026, 2027, he turns into Cody Rhodes, the American nightmare, kissing babies, handing out jackets. He becomes the most beloved president in brown American history. I think that's on the table.
Because if he can, because whatever the number is, let's be frank. I joked about this back in 2016 when he was running. He's like, here's the thing: Trump doesn't need to build a full wall. He just needs enough of a wall that when there's a camera in front of him and it pans left and it pans right, you can't see where the wall ends. That's it. He just needs that shot. And look at this glorious wall. It goes as far as your camera shot can pan in either direction. It's a glorious wall. And so he just needs enough of the bad elements out. Whether you say it's 900, it could be 300,000, could be, it could be the population of Hastings or Grand Island, Nebraska. We don't know what that number is.
That's right.
But it's sort of like in any organization, it's what I call the Pareto principle. The
Yeah,
Pareto principle, yeah, I'm sure you're familiar, but like
80/20s.
Yep, 20% of the people in your organization are responsible for 80% of the output. Well, I imagine that applies to the bad folks too.
I think you're right.
Like, and so that once you get that just right number where people can actually start to see, like, hey, things are peaceful and people aren't getting harmed in any way, and there isn't crime, and like, yeah, if Trump can in any way kind of claim some sort, because like, dude, you and I been talking about illegal immigration our whole lives. I mean, Nate, it's sort of what you do.
It is what I do.
Okay, like, and if Trump could just say, "I just solved the problem, and now we just do it," like, now amnesty, that's going to be all right for the three parts of the party here. Okay, the American First, the anti-secular, the working class, and then the three leaders of the party: the techno oligarchs, the neocons, and the peaceniks. I've kind of charted those down. So, well, all right, let's look at amnesty. The peaceniks, they're going to be kind of ambivalent to it. Like there'll be some that'll be for, some that'll be against. The neocons, they will be 1,000% for it. They will be falling over themselves. They will be shedding tears of joy. Bandit evening, ladies. Howdy, Bandit. The techno oligarchs, I think, will be
for it.
The Musks of the world, the Vivek Ramaswamis of the world. Like, yeah, they're going to definitely. Now,
they're licking their chops. They want that cheap labor, Phil.
So the peaceniks are the only pushback, but they're going to be somewhat ambivalent of it at the leadership end. But the voter end, that's where it gets fun. Your three groups here: your anti-secularist. That I'm just putting it as that anti-secularist. Your working class and your America Firsters.
America First and working class people are going to have big problems.
Oh yeah, they're going to be like, wait, what the?
This is not what we voted for.
We voted you in just to give amnesty. That's not what we vote. The anti-secularists also they might be kind of like the peaceniks, where they're ambivalent about it.
Well, if they're Catholic, they love it because half their congregations are these illegal immigrants. So,
yes, the wider concerns of the creedal Christians, Nate.
That's right. The creedal Christians love the immigrants. They got to.
Now, for those who don't know, within the sound of my voice, that's apparently what Mormons refer to, well, the rest of us, creedal Christians.
Right. Know your role.
I just thought that was too funny. First time I read that, like, yep, I know Nate's heard that term once or twice.
That's right. It's all over Mormon Twitter right now. Fights between these cultish Mormon folks and these creedal Christians. It's pretty funny.
I do enjoy watching those. Those are one of my favorite. His name is Lego Joseph Smith.
Oh yeah,
he's actually pretty funny. But anyway, so here's the problem: is the party leadership is going to think, hey, this is a great idea. The voters are going to be like, nuh-uh. And suddenly the Republicans are in the problem that the Democrats are in right now.
Well, I would go that far because I think, kind of like you said, a lot of this has to do with trust, Phil. I think a lot of this has to do with trust. I think that a non-trivial number of working class people, especially if Trump is able to fully get the 20%, to borrow your Pareto principle, if they can get the 20% of the baddies out, reestablish trust with the executive, I don't actually think that folks are nativist in terms of, I don't want foreigners in my country. I think they want to know that their government isn't so incompetent that people are coming across haphazardly, stealing jobs, causing problems, right? If the trust is restored, if Trump truly declares mission accomplished and restores trust with the electorate and the American people, then he can do the babyface turn and he's fine. To your point, though, Phil, what happens if a heel turns babyface and the audience isn't ready? Let's go ask Roman Reigns how that bad boy turned out. Right? Yeah, even ask The Rock. He wanted to come in as a babyface last year to WrestleMania, and the people said, that's not it, Jack. And so you're exactly right to say, in order for the babyface turn to happen, Trump has to win back the trust, and the electorate has to really, really trust the administration if that's going to happen. And I can tell you today that trust does not exist. He's not there yet. But if he's hyper successful, I think he could. And I think he will, unless the economy gets so good that it just starts to suck people back in again, and then you can't do it.
Now, the big problem here is the biggest hump that you got to get over here is the America First crowd, because I can tell you exactly how they talk. All right. And like, this is exactly if you came into this country illegally in any way, that is a violation of our laws. And so you are part of that criminal element. And so you need to be expelled as well. And they don't really draw
Let's do a deal, Phil. Let's do a deal right now. Here I am. I will be the techno bros on this one.
Okay.
Let's cut a deal. You're right. There needs to be a penalty. Expulsion is on the table. We can make them leave and then come back in. Do it the right way the second time through. That's a possibility. What about this? What about a variation on the $5 million gold card? And instead of a gold card, we call it a teal card. And this is for the working class poor in America. They've been here for 20 years. They don't need to pony up $5 million, but they need to pony up $15,000. Right? You got to pay a penalty. And by the way, under criminal law in the state of Nebraska, a $15,000 fine would put you at a class 2 felony. So you pay a class 2 level felony level of fine as your penalty for having screwed us up, and that money goes straight to paying down the debt. Phil, start doing the numbers. What's 15,000 times 10 million?
Oh, you're gonna make me do math? Come on, bro. All right. 15,000 times 10 million is, let's see, $150 billion.
All right. So you can take your $150 billion and you can dump it straight into the national debt. You could point it at America First policies, make them pay for it. You could also shut off and say, you know what, we'll let you be legal, never a citizen, right? There's a lot of things you could do to try to make it and to continue to have the trust of the American people, where you say they'll never be citizens, they'll never vote, they'll never draw a Social Security check. They're never going to do any of those things, but they can have a driver's license. And as long as they don't get any DUIs, they don't commit any crimes, we won't deport them. And they can travel home to see mama on Christmas. And that's it. They pay the penalty. They live the rules. They can never vote. We're money. Now, I'm just saying there's a way you could construct this bad boy that even the America First boys and go, all right, I get it. Yeah, that's a pretty good deal for us. That's pretty good.
Leave it to a lawyer to find a great mediation, okay? let me say, but now, Nate, this is something I want you to, like, I'm not even saying this is my counter to you, but I want you to just keep this in your mind. I remember I read this in a book when I was younger. I believe it was called Inheriting the Wind. Maybe it was wrong title, but it was about folks that were illegally immigrating to the United States. And at one point they were asked, after they had been apprehended, and this was a question they were asked, and I've been wrestling with it for many, many years. And they asked, because they were applying for citizenship, and they said, can we honestly expect, if your foundational act within our borders was a violation of our laws, for you to be a good citizen? And it was one of those that I've wrestled with because I've always tried to find that third way, like you're trying to find, Nate. But then that's something I always remember in the back of my mind. Is so, like, unfortunately with the America Firsters, it's sort of like the Palestinians under Yasser Arafat. It doesn't matter how good of a deal you give them, it's not good enough. Do you see? Like, that's one thing that I know that's one hell of a comparison, but
I get your point. The point's well taken. Let's think through this together, Phil. I like the phrase. I like that. A good trebuchet would, in fact, be worth the $15K. I like that.
Bandit goes, 2024 is the closest to babyface Trump America's going to see. And he didn't know Mormons.
That could be. Yeah, no, that's right. We should have a theological conversation one day, Phil.
I'd love it.
Okay. No, let's think through this really quick. So, I'm a big believer in the phrase "forgive but verify." So your point is well taken, where you say, hold on a minute. If your foundation is a sin, how do we confirm repentance? Because to your point, I think, if we're just being super honest, it'll probably be 80-20 again. 80% will do great, and they'll make me look great. And then 20% will still rape, pillage, and who knows do what else, right? So how can we both forgive and verify? We live in such an interesting age, Phil, that you could conceive of a technological way to increase verification on some of these folks. So imagine this. Imagine we have them waive their right to searches and seizures. So if you want to do this deal and we think that you're being naughty in your home, we don't got to go to a judge. Oh, how about this? What if we actually have everybody pre-sign their own deports? So you get the card, you pre-sign your own deport, so that if you cross a line with us, no more lines, no more due process. You, as a consenting adult, waive those rights so that if we catch you being naughty through AI or personal check-ins or something to that effect, we'll send you right on the F home. And there won't be this, stand in line 7 years for a deportation. We'll just send you on the next plane and you're gone. Forgive and verify, Phil. Forgive and verify. That's what I'd say, because I think you're right. How do you forgive and verify? Because that's what you need. You got to have some trust. The money helps, but that doesn't build trust. I can cut you a check. That doesn't bring trust back. If anything, makes you feel like a whore. Makes you feel like, oh, you guys just think you can pay me off for all your bad behavior. That's an indulgence. It's anti-Christian.
I've been used. No one will want to marry me now. Yeah, exactly. But that actually, I'll be honest, I have some misgivings, but that's actually more palatable to me than your previous plan. If that makes sense.
We're reasoning together, Phil. We're reasoning together.
It's like, now again, I'm like, the working class folks in your they'll be on board with that. Your anti-seculars, like I said, they're ambivalent, so you'll probably win them over. The America Firsters, that's one of those, you just keep chipping away at it. Even
that's it, baby. I'm just looking for a win.
But so, like, yeah, where they sign, basically, for lack of better terms, a contract with the United States government.
Yeah, that's exactly. And it waives a bunch of their rights. Yeah.
And then eventually, like, some sort of path to citizenship there. Like, I'm open to all of that. I'm not as hardlined as a lot of the folks on the far right on it, because, like, I'll be honest with you, like, this is between you and me, Nate. Okay, like, we're not getting into a theological discussion, but it ties in. Since I came to Christ, the one political thing that has changed in my mind, because if all of my worldly politics just matched 1 for 1 afterwards, that would be somewhat suspicious. Okay, like, I'll be honest. But the one that I softened on quite a bit was immigration. And the one thing that I remember is, I don't know if you remember this, but there was this family that was on the other end of this razor wire. And this guy, I forget what kind of agent he was, and he cut the razor wire. And on Twitter, I was very disappointed to see a lot of people on the right going, that guy's a traitor. He needs to go to prison for cutting that. And my thought was, would Jesus have cut that razor wire? Or do you think he would have just let those poor people crawl through it for whatever principle that you're wanting to uphold here? Okay. And so that's my thought. Like, you cut the freaking razor wire. Okay. Like that was where I had sort of a shift, is like, we're all made in God's image here. And so let's try to treat each other like that. And so, and one guy was like, I don't care. We don't owe these people anything. It's like, well, if that's the case, we don't owe them cruelty either. Okay. And so
Phil, you're kind of insinuating this without saying it, but an excess of America First does lead us down to some dark holes. I mean, it's just true. There's an extreme wing of America First that doesn't sit great with me.
I've been picking that up from what you've been throwing down these last few months.
Yeah. I've been more intense on Twitter than I'm in real life. That's my playground for ideas, right? So saying intense things is what I'm all about online. But I am concerned. There is a group. I don't even think it's Pareto. I think it's much smaller. I think it's about 5 to 7% of the Make America Great Again coalition that really does have what I would call some misplaced beliefs about race, some misplaced beliefs about human dignity. And on the immigration topic, it sort of manifests itself. Like I've been concerned, Phil, about something like this. If a green card holder supports Hamas verbally, I'm not talking about materially, there's no money, they're not raising funds, they're not recruiting people, but they just say, I freaking hope that the Gazans and Hamas wins the war. If those words are spoken, I don't like our government targeting that person, Phil. I don't like it. I don't like it. Now, I understand America first. I understand a lot of our Jewish brothers and sisters are feeling very attacked for good reason because they have been attacked, right? Like there's a lot of good reasons why that is the most disgusting kind of speech you could imagine. But in my mind, first comes rights because those come from God, and then comes government. And I believe this very deeply, that God in heaven has given us a freedom of speech, and it is illegitimate for governments to curtail that speech unless very extreme kind of situations. And I don't think that we've reached that threshold, but there is a bloodlust on some of MAGA right to say, no. If you're not a citizen, you get no rights. Phil, that to me sounds a little bit like not everybody is inside of God's sovereignty. And that bugs. I do not like that. And I'm not for that. I think that first come rights because they came from my maker. And then my government, which is also instituted of God. I mean, Mormons, we're a big believer that like we're not anarchists, okay? We're not anarcho-Christians, although that'd be a fun topic for another day. But I do believe that governments can and should curtail some of our rights in certain situations because we live in a fallen world. It's just the way things work. But to say that the non-citizen is out of the reach of God's given rights to man, that doesn't sit right with me. And a lot of people on Magistan are like, citizens have or non-citizens have no rights. I'm like, oh, then you think rights come from government. You don't think they come from our maker. You think they come from government. And frankly, that's gross. America first, taking the place of God first, that's a problem. I'm not saying that's what everybody's doing, but there's this small segment. I don't know, man. They certainly sound that way. It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've always kind of made a project of myself is like wherever I see like some sort of overt racism on the right, I generally try to purge that. Like it's wherever possible, because like you said, like we're all made in God's image here. And when you talk about rights, like where do they come from? Is it from God or government? You do bring up that very interesting point of like you are kind of conceding that your rights come from government there. Now, I'm not at all familiar with this guy. Like I heard he was a green card holder and he got deported for saying something, apparently. Yeah. But that's the extent that I know. I've got a screaming baby upstairs, so
we should probably wrap this up. My boys are knocking at the door too. We probably
okay, all righty. Well, here's the problem, Nate. You and I can talk endlessly.
Yes, and we should.
Yes. Now, all right. Couple of things. Before we close out here, I will say that you are correct on there is an element of the far right in MAGA that needs to be watched closely and see, like, because like there's that very dangerous end of the left.
I don't want to overstate stuff. No, I'm with you. I don't want to overstate. I actually think that for far too long, the left has libeled the right and made it to sound like Mitt Romney belonged to these groups. I mean, that's insane, right? Like that's nuts. I'm not saying that we're in a bad place, but there are some vibes coming out of a small chunk of Magistan that makes me uncomfortable. Small chunk, very small.
I've noticed. Now, Nate, before we go, I just want to say, I would like to speak with you again in the future on a couple of things. Again, of course, politics is always good. Also, I would like to get you. We do need to have a theological discussion because I think that would be.
I need to be called to repentance, Phil. You might be the one.
No. Repent! Like we just both keep yelling at each other and saying repent for an hour, and that's it.
That's right. Your pastoral duty is to call me to repentance.
Repent, you heretic! Like, oh yeah, this is fun. But we need to do that sometime. And then also, Nate, I've been wanting it for a long time. I want your magnum opus on OJ. We're one of these days we're doing that. You're like, oh Phil, thank you so much for making me touch on a hot button issue. That's so nice of you. And this year of our Lord 2025, that's never a problem. Now, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Nate. We never got to this chart here.
Yeah, this is actually a very misleading graph. I need to clean this one up. But this just says not a U.S. citizen. This is by age. So there are from 35 to 39 year olds. There's over 3 million immigrants in that age range. So this is just age range. And you can see the people who are crossing are predominantly people in the prime working ages. I know that there's been a lot of chit chat about like, oh, well, people are coming over in their battle ages. Well, if you look, there are just as many 20 to 24-year-olds as there are 50 to 54-year-olds. The real cohort that is crossing over and is coming to the United States are people in their mid-30s reaching the prime working age years. They're coming to work, man. That's what they want.
That's been my experience, anywho. And then, just
well, this is inflation. I do think that immigrants have something to do with inflation. I've heard some complaints that like this, JD Vance has been on this about how housing costs go up because of migrants. I think that is true. However, we also see that inflation has a bunch of possible different trajectories in the future, and actually having a drop off in the labor pool does bring costs down, but it comes at the cost of growth.
Yeah. And just real quick, Bandit's kind of touching on like the difference between like human rights and legal rights. And like, that is a distinction to talk about.
And Bandit, to your point, I mean, this is actually a very good point. What we could do then is we could actually make a list of what are our God-given rights and which rights actually pop up out of the social construct. Because as you're kind of insinuating here, inside of a democracy, I don't think that God only believes that democracies are the only form of government that could work. So I don't believe that the right to vote is a God-given right, because I do believe that you could live in a monarchical situation, or, like the French Republic for a while had committees. Like there are different government arrangements that I think that God would be okay with, assuming that they are living under the principles of righteousness, right? And so if you make that assumption, so you are correct. That particular right may not fall into the God-given category, because if you lived in a good, godly king's kingdom and you didn't have the right to vote, I don't think you could stand up and shout, no, God gave me the right to vote. You must be a democracy. So it's well said, Bandit. I don't think that every right that we have as Americans is God-given. We should qualify it that way. That's a fair point.
Yeah. And just what was this chart about, real quick?
Oh, this was okay. There's been some concern that one of the things that happens with high amounts of immigration is you see a decrease in wages. So even though we had this huge uptick in immigrants, we also had a huge uptick in growth in salaries and wages at the exact same time. Now you could tell me it would have been even bigger without the migrants. That's fair, but I just want to say it didn't cause damage. It might just have taken the top off of, I guess, of some of the highest possible wages. But the wage, you can see this. The wages were going up as the immigrants were coming. The wages attract the immigrants, right? They're not really suppressing them very much, if at all, in my opinion. So that was just the last little piece on this, because people talk about this. And look, wage growth is decelerating now, and migrants have stopped coming. Like that kind of tracks with my whole theory. But now, thank you, Phil.
No problem. Nate, I do appreciate you coming by. And one last thing I want to say from something you said earlier is, if we fractured into multiple Nebraskas, 2 Nebraskas, sure, that might not be good for our defense of the state, but in the Senate, we would get 4 senators, which to me would be hilarious. I'm sorry. It's like, now, actually, unfortunately, one of them would probably be a Democrat. So,
it depends on what Eastern Nebraska does, right? Well, to your point, I think if more Nebraskans were in D.C., we'd be in less of a mess. That's just my experience.
Well, Nate, please tell the folks if and where they can find you and everything, all that good stuff, good sir.
You can find me on Phil K.O.E. coming to you soon. I'm also on Twitter at @ Dallon. My tag is confirmation bias. That's actually beware confirmation bias. Beware confirming your own biases. That's mostly for myself. I'm on constant notice that I should not be confirming my own biases, because I have them.
Well, Nate, again, thank you, good sir, for swinging by. If you stick around, just kind of watch in the background, I actually have an interview that my grandpa did back in 2013 that I just found, and I'm going to play that for the folks here. So
that's great.
Also have that for my uses. But sir, I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate your expertise and your analysis. You're a busy man, so and you, much like me, we both have families and children, and I got a 4-month-old, and that's
all right. You ready for mine? 10, 9, 6, and 18 months. Those are my 4 boys.
4 boys. No girls yet?
No girls yet.
Still.
We'll see. I'm getting old, Phil. Getting old. I'm not quite to that 40 mark, but I'm close.
How old are you?
I'm 39 as of a couple days ago. What, 3 days ago?
Okay. I turned 40 in October. So we're actually not that far apart. So
we're old millennials together, as it
Yep.
should be.
Yep. The
As
last
it should be.
haircut I got, because I let my hair get really long, suddenly it was like, oh, wow, I'm super gray. Whoa, what happened, man? Like,
That's
even
right.
my daughter's like, Dad, what happened? Like, time, kid. That's what
Time.
happened. But Nate,
Fear not, it's coming for you too, honey.
thank you. Yes, but all right, now, folks, always remember, he is the finest attorney in all immigrationness. If basically he could find a way to get a Martian his citizenship late tonight or early tomorrow morning. That's how good he is. The one, the only Nate Dallon. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Love you.
God bless. Nate Dallon, folks. That was great. That was great. He's always a great conversation, and I am looking forward to our theology discussion sometime in the future. But yeah, he's quite the guy. Looks like he's still trying to. It ain't like there we go. I was gonna say it's not like Discord. You can just click the little X up in the far right corner, and you're done. That's what I love about StreamYard. It's actually kind of seamless. But yes, folks, that was the great attorney Nate Dallon, and there was some really good stuff. I'm gonna clip out some stuff about like his thoughts on Ukraine and all kinds of good stuff, because that was I was really glad with that. But folks, we are now gonna move on and shift gears a little bit. We're going to play an interview with my grandfather, which I've been wanting to play for some time. Finally got to it, if you will, and found it. And now we're going to play it for you, beautiful people. This is an interview with my grandfather from 2013. So this is Wendell Lauber. So without further ado, folks, I'm looking forward to this. Let's get into it.
Do you want me to talk to you as Joe, as though I'm talking?
Yeah, I mean, that feels more comfortable to me.
Yeah, you bet. I'd like that. Well, Joe, the question was, how did I get started in the seed business, or more particularly the seed corn business? And that's a result of the history of our family in the Dust Bowl years. My father got started in the legume business, alfalfa and clover, because nothing would hold the soil except those deep-rooted legumes. They'd also produce nitrogen for the soil. So there was nothing could be raised on our little 80 acres of ground. So he took to the road and went and traveled the Platte Valleys, clear on out to the Colorado line, and anything north and south, excuse me, where there, where there were river bottoms and could grow these legumes. And eventually was able to buy a fair amount of the seed from the farmers, and to the point where he had to find a place for it. Not too many had any money in Nebraska or Kansas to buy seed of any kind. So he said, I got to create a market. And he went back into Iowa and Illinois and developed seed outlets to other seed companies there. So he created quite a business selling alfalfa and sweet clover from all over the western part of gathering seed from the western part of Nebraska and taking it back into Iowa and Illinois. As time developed, and we came out of the Dust Bowl years, he kind of liked the idea of seed business. And so he decided to wonder what to sell to stay in business when it started raining again. Well, the universities of the various Midwestern states were developing a little item called hybrid corn. It was in its infancy then, but he said, that had potential if we ever get rains here again. So he became friends and with a number of university developers, and decided that since we had a farm on the Blue River, he could maybe raise some hybrid, that's newfangled hybrid seed corn on some of the good ground near the Blue River. Well, it took off, of course, and he said, there could be a market for this if it ever starts raining again. Well, that started us in the seed business. And he continued to develop his contacts for alfalfa and clover as a method of keeping up income coming into his seed business, but he really wanted to get involved in the hybrid corn business. Since it was still in its infancy, it took time for him to get land that he could irrigate and raise a little bit of it, and it took time to develop contacts to start selling it. Well, all this transpired, and the Lauber Blue Valley hybrid seed corn business was born in the early 40s. Most of the production was done in the Blue River Valley to begin with, because that's the only place that was wet. Later on, the rest of the state of Nebraska decided that there was actually water here underground, and they started putting down deep wells for irrigating above the ground. Well, this was a natural for corn production, because corn wouldn't grow unless you had a positive source of water. So as irrigation developed in Nebraska and all over the Midwestern states, he said, I believe there's a business for a new business in hybrid seed corn. And varieties improved. And in the early 1940s, more specifically, probably in 1942 and 43, he decided to create a plan called Lauber Blue Valley Hybrids, which was basically hybrid seed corn. And with a small acreage, he started, and it developed because there was no one producing hybrid seed corn, first of all, and secondly, hardly in Nebraska and Kansas and Iowa, at least the western part of Iowa. So he was able to develop that business, and that started the hybrid seed corn growing plans of, at that time, he used the Lauber Blue Valley brand. Well, fast forwarding considerably, it was successful. He developed a number of dealers in Kansas, Nebraska, and a little bit in Iowa. And my brother Clayton and I grew up, and we helped service these dealers along with paid district men who would talk to dealers and set them up and so on. So we got started in hybrid corn. The history of hybrid corn through the Great Plains is manyfold. Many names came up, many companies sprung up in several states in the Midwest. Hybrid seed corn was a big thing. There are a number of large, giant hybrid seed corn companies which still exist. We kept going through a certification program in the Nebraska Certified Seed Program. And with that certification symbol, we were able to sell certified hybrid seed corn to other states in the nearby states, Kansas, South Dakota, Iowa. We didn't get into Colorado too much because the land changed out there when you got away from the rivers. But along the river valleys, we had dealers scattered all through the areas. These were personal dealers of ours. It was quite good to us. Demand in some years exceeded supply. Some years in a good production year, we had enough to supply the dealers we had. We expanded probably in the neighborhood of, at one point, up to 60 or 70 dealers in the Midwest. Now, back in the 40s and 50s, that was a pretty good saturation, and a few dealers even in Kansas. But through that time, a lot of name brands were associated, we were associated with, and others in the hybrid seed corn industry continued. However, we continued to produce, if not for ourselves, for other companies as well under their labels. It's not commonly known, but it was a fact. It helped us take on extra land and produce seed that we needed to have physical facilities, dryers, detasseling groups, all the things that go with the production of it, so that we could sell a larger amount other than through our own dealer organization. Well, that's just actually a cosmetic idea of how hybrid seed began and was sold in Nebraska. We were an early part of it, fortunately. We've gone through a number of organizations to sell our production since then. It's been a very good ride. A lot of the people who started with us are no longer producing, but that, I guess, to be expected. We just didn't know any better and kept on producing hybrid seed corn. Unfortunately, we had a market for it. Through the years, I've had several cases where if they saw Lauber Seed Farms on the tag or Lauber Blue Valley hybrids, whatever the case might be, I never had any trouble selling to them. Many farmers would say, "Hey, we know who you are. You don't need to tell us." And that was pretty gratifying for a little farm boy that didn't know anything and growing up and trying to talk to dealers. And he put me on the road when I was 16. And I said, "Dad, I don't know anything about this." And he said, "You like to drive, don't you?" I said, "Oh, you bet." He said, "Get out there and just talk to the dealers. You're a farmer, they're a farmer, you'll get along fine." And he was pretty much right. I loved talking to him. We had the same language. And so we've been pretty fortunate. We've been through a number of other brand names, which I won't go into now. Now we're selling back on our own name again. My boys are actually taking the lead in it, which I have 4, and 3 of them decided to be part of this operation, which is pretty good average, I guess, or pretty bad average for them. I don't know what the case may be. But anyway, it has evolved to where we now do not have a brand that we want to market as such. We are blessed with a large wholesale business, which actually, so far anyway, we've been able to sell all that we've produced, and has caused a tremendous increase in production capability. And this is primarily because of my 3 sons at this point anyway. That's the only one still surviving. But they sell internationally, and our main business is to ask major or minor seed corn companies what particular specific variety they want increased. And all of our production is ISO, internationally certified, so it can go anywhere in the world. So with this capability, and that has not been easy to attain, I might add, there aren't many with that capability in the Midwest. Yes, there are a few, but not many. So we feel very fortunate, and I guess because we've been able to expand the production, says that there may be, in fact, a market out there for that class. So we do not sell under our label anymore. We sell for other companies, and the tag on it is an international certification, IIO. If you buy a bolt or a nut, there will be IO on it which means that that boat and that size is an international recognized symbol. ISO on seed production indicates that it is produced with a recognized, accepted, verified set of rules. So any company in the world can buy it or ask us to produce for them. That's, I don't think we ever envisioned we would see such a wide market for our products grown in Geneva, Nebraska area. So it's, in a way, it might be considered a Horatio Alger stories, but it's taken 3 generations or more for us to get even to that point. And it hasn't been without its problems, as anyone might expect. We're very proud of it, and we're very jealously guarding anything that might deviate the acceptance of the product in the international market. That's a quick resume of where we came from and where we're at. I'm 82 at this point, 82 and a half. I never expected it to happen in my lifetime. And I don't know how much farther it can go, but I have 4 boys that are probably going to find out.
Hold on 1 minute here.
As much as I could.
Yeah.
Anything I left out that you think I might be of interest?
I think that was about it.
I think it really was. But I mean, I'll be glad if you give me a topic. I'll talk forever.
There's a whole bunch of things you had to invent along the way.
Yeah.
You know, it's not.
Oh, you can put this in as an addendum or something if you like.
It's not like you were selling cars and
The
you
car
started a
market
business
developed.
and grew a business. You had to grow the business and invent it. How to do it better and better along the way.
And some of those,
Maybe your dad did also.
well, I don't know about a gadget, but some of the inventions are still very evident in the machines that we purchase today. They're not inventions, they're innovations.
What are some of those? Can you name them?
Okay. Well, the idea of hybridization, are you rolling? The idea of hybridization in a corn plant is that you make the plant, which is both male and sterile, you modify it to where it is either a female or a male plant. I.e., if you want it to be a female plant, you pull the tassel. If you want it to be a male plant, you discard the ear. So having said that, it's pretty easy to hybridize anything in corn simply by actually removing the tassel or not. And the ear is still there to capture what you want it to be. So, gee, that was easy. So all you got to do is pull the tassel out or cut it off maybe. Well, IE ushered in the era of mechanized detasseling. We used to use literally hundreds of young boys and girls, to pull the tassel out to make it a producing plant. I think at our peak, we probably had, I remember one peak, we had 8 school buses every morning of approximately 45 people or more. And so I don't know, it's 200 or 300 people. That's an interesting logistics thing in a small town area.
Yeah.
to get 6 school buses full of kids from the various communities around.
It's a big percentage of the community.
Yeah, certainly not all of them. You don't get them all, but a big percentage of each community. And I think we ranged as far away as about 45 miles away for the farthest bus. But that was quite an exciting thing to see 300 or 400 kids in your field at 7 o'clock in the morning, ready to do a job that you didn't think anybody else in the world wanted to do. And certainly I wasn't crazy about it, even having grown up with it. But anyway, that was probably the highest peak in pulling. And then since then, of course, it's been mechanized. You can pick and choose what you want in it. Fortunately, it's become mechanized to the point that instead of having to pull the tassel out, and we even had high clearance rigs that kids rode on to pull the tassel out. That was mechanization to begin with. But that evolved quickly. Okay, if you had a high clearance rig going through there, why didn't you put something on it that would cut the tassel off? So then we went to cutters, just little high lawnmowers. Well, that evolved to some genius in the East come up with, why don't you put on big washing machine rollers and roll them out gentler on the plant. We evolved through that, all mechanized, which was really great. Anything mechanized, to get rid of all these kids. And you can run a machine 24 hours a day if you want to. That's right.
Yeah.
So, wow. Hello. Here's a brand new type of invention. It has evolved to, you saw some machines today that still go over their high clearance tractors. Still, I might mention they're air conditioned and cabbed and everything today. But anyway, their high clearance tractors are going 4-wheel drive, and they have magnetic sensors that are controlled in air conditioned cabs, hydraulic height of each row, to where if Mother Nature grows one taller or shorter than the other one, you can adjust each row within a given thing, and they will electronically get rid of that tassel. Some cut it, some burn it off. There's a variety of ways, but they electronically take it off. Most common is to cut it off. Some of them prefer to roll it out. If you have a
You guys had both.
yeah, it depends. Sometimes we're working on very expensive inbreds, increasing those. They like the rollers. It gently comes in and pulls the tassel right out. If it's a highly productive commercial variety that's been out a while, it's just as economical to cut it out.
Right.
However, roller is always better. But so we have all these different types depending upon what we're asked to raise anymore. Sometimes we're asked to raise the parent inbred lines. So you have to treat it entirely different. So we're equipped to do all of those different stages that there's a market for. I don't know whether that's too common or not. I think not, perhaps. In other words, we've adapted to where, what do you want produced? We'll produce it. How much of it do you want? If it's enough for us to take a hold and create bin space for or dryer space for, we'll do it. If it isn't, we're not in the business to do work we may need some of this, produce me a little bit of it. We're geared for quantity production, high volume, and very accurate production of it. So it's moved to a point that I never expected to see. Have no idea where it's going in the future, but it'll probably always be better and more selective. We still have equipment which is very adaptable to anything that can be raised in quantity, merchandising wise. And if we don't have it, my boys say, which handle it all now, we can get it done for you. We can have it made. We can get it done. They have they know what the parameters have to be to get it raised. So I think if it's physically possible and somebody can dream up something that will do it where no one else's can, I think we'll probably have it done. The acreage capability has expanded. I don't know what our capability is. It continues to grow.
Well, we were saying earlier today, you guys this year produced 7 million acres.
Oh, that's what the seed will produce.
Right. The seed will produce 7 million acres.
Yeah, it's not that much acres of production.
No, obviously not.
But we're in an area of guaranteed irrigation capability. Pivot irrigation has been around long enough. It can become very precise. Modern technology of soil is very important. We have been blessed with a number of people in various states who have accomplished understanding of soil and production in it to a very high degree. We've had people, since we rent a lot of ground to put this production on, have ground sold out from underneath our rental for the next production year. And the boys tell me invariably, if we farmed it very long, that the new owner will say, "What have you done to that ground?" And we smile and say, "I don't know." Well, the answer to that is very complicated and we've learned lessons over a number of years. And we do things to that soil and to the crop that are not common farmer applicated situations. As a result, since our goal is a very, very expensive product off of that ground, that we can well afford to do things for that ground to improve it that the average farmer could not economically consider. Now that gives us a very interesting edge on any ground that we can own or rent for a period of time to build that ground up, because we know beyond a shadow of a doubt what it will produce, and it will probably outproduce any average ground around it. Yeah, and we kind of insist on irrigatable ground, because you can't put all of these qualities in Fillmore County, Nebraska, for instance, who only generally gets the right amount of rain without irrigation. But if you have irrigation available, then you can comfortably, and you have the probability of using that ground for a while, then you can start building the organic, and I really think that's the key word, but the organic, but certainly the chemical level of production on that ground up to a very, very high point. I don't know whether this goes on camera or not, but I'll tell you one thing. In the history of Fillmore County is clay ground, little top surface ground, and then clay down for 10 feet. Well, now that's not ideal ground to grow anything on. That's why legumes grew well here. They went down and they broke up that clay ground and allowed other roots to go down there. Okay, well, you can't do that to thousands and thousands of acres. So what you do is you let microbes and soil fertility agents and chemicals, balanced chemical agents and microbes do the work for you. And this takes a period of time. But once accomplished, most farmers consider the value of a soil sample by the amount of organic matter in it. Most universities do too. So the object is to let the proper balance of fertility and microbial action, and I'll just group them together there. If you can let them and Mother Nature do their work faster than they would normally, you got an edge. And in essence, this is what gives us, we feel, an edge. And we've got it down to truly a science, an agricultural, organic science. This has happened through trial and error and much, much help from many, many people over probably 40, 50 decades. So it didn't come to us overnight or anything. It's a result of a lot of trial and errors and so on. My dad brought this is irrelevant, I guess, but my dad brought the first train carload of ammonium nitrate, nitrogen, into Fillmore County on rail. There was nothing like it was there before, but it wasn't available commercially. So one way or another, we've been in the business of trying to improve farming and farming practices and farming ground itself for close to 90 years. Because I'm ready. I'm over 80, and they did it long before I was around. But anyway, but it's been fun. It's been a treacherous. I don't know what to say. It's been a very difficult time. Irrigation come in when I was became possible when I was about 12 years old, 10, 12 years old.
Irrigation
in Nebraska.
As in pivots?
As in deep well irrigation. Pivots didn't come along until probably 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago in any quantity. Before that, it was you dug a hole. The first irrigation well Lauber Seed Farms had was dug by hand with a post hole digger. Needless to say, it wasn't very successful, but it was done. And it was used for a month or two, or a few months, one season, I guess is what I was told. And the technology of maintaining the hole improved considerably in those early years. And in other words, 5 or 10 years later, the university developed irrigation well was perfected. And of course, from then on, it was a boom. The county, I don't know how many irrigation wells Fillmore County has, but deep irrigation wells, but a lot. My dad was on the, time-wise, was on the beginning end of it. When he realized there was a layer of irrigation water down there, if you could just tap it, boy, it was like a kid to candy. There was no stopping him until he finally figured out how to master it. And some of his neighbors in Shickley, who have drilled most of the irrigation wells in Fillmore County and a lot around it, are still, the descendants are still there, and still some of the biggest well drillers in the area. So it's just being in the right place, the right time. But for us, it has been an opportunity to expand when we had both the knowledge in seed production and the irrigation potential here. It's worked out well for us. I've enjoyed it. It's sustained me to be able to always do something better, because technology and seed production, along with the God-given right of water and the knowledge of fertility, has contributed totally to the success of our business here.
Very nice.
So I'm happy to be a part of it, and I'm happy to have lived through it, and I'm grateful that the good Lord has given me some sons to help carry it on, and of course they're into improvements that I can only shake my head at and say, well, I wished I had those 30, 40, 50 years ago, but I didn't, nor will I ever. But I think they are now selling internationally, ISO certified, internationally certified. I would guess that they or their offspring or some major company will continue the process. And probably in this location, although there are lots of places in Nebraska that it could be accomplished, Nebraska still is blessed with irrigation water. It's the reason that a big plant was put in north of here next to Fairmont, which takes corn and distills it and makes ethanol out of it. And they use a tremendous amount of irrigation water, what we call, farmers call irrigation water, every day to make ethanol.
Yeah.
And you've probably seen the smokestack,
Oh, yeah.
just
Oh,
about
corn vapor coming off.
5-6 miles from here. I don't know what their output is daily, but it's huge. There's rail cars stacked there that are at least a half mile long all the time, and semis, tankers going in and out, hauling it on the highway. So
Yeah, you can't pipe ethanol.
is that the deal?
Yeah, you can't put it through a pipeline. Is that right, Dad?
Yeah, it evaporates.
Must be correct.
It evaporates.
So I don't know how long that industry will hold. I suppose as long as the water will hold. If we lose the water, we're going to lose the capability to produce the hybrid corn that they're using too. So I suppose the whole thing will stop. I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime, but that's contributed not only to our success in producing hybrid seed corn, but other industries as well, as what I'm suggesting. And I suppose in some small way, we might have a historical, something to do historically from making the two products available, and at least one product available here in around Geneva, Nebraska. It's given me a good life for my family. I don't know for how many more, but I wore out 2 knees and a hip walking in fields to detassel them or rogue them. And I'm still going, so I guess you can replace those things. But it took a lot of, there used to be a lot of hard work associated with it. It's much easier today. It's mostly mechanical. And even if it uses personnel to ride and it doesn't anymore, they do it automatically. So I guess that's out. It just doesn't take the number of kids that it used to produce a hybrid plant anymore. Although many areas in the United States still use young people to do it, I'm sure it will be a vanishing thing because technology is taking a hold and making it impractical. In other words, which would you want to buy? A very expensive high clearance machine to do your detasseling, or work with several school buses of young people? Well, I think the choice is relatively easy there, but And of course, there aren't, even if the choice weren't easy, there just aren't as many young people interested in going out and walking all day in mud up to their knees and then going home just so tired they can hardly walk up to the door. So that era, I think, is probably over. But it's been an interesting one.
It was a good job for kids because it was really one of the best jobs available at the time. I don't know about today, but it was real.
Oh, in its time, when you consider coming out of the
well, you could be
40s.
I think you could be 14.
Yeah, you consider we come out of the war years. There weren't a lot of jobs for young people.
Yeah.
If you're on a farm, you had all the work you could get, but the kids in the city had to look for a job.
Right.
And boy, we took them all.
Right.
Well, they were talking today about these guys who are coming out to do the, detasseling after the machines had got it just to make sure everything's good. They're getting paid $23 an hour or something.
Really?
Yeah, that's what Brad was saying.
Well, yeah. Well, okay. I wasn't aware of that. There's an alternative. Yeah. And I don't think anybody wants to pay 20 some bucks an hour.
Maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe I was.
Well, no, he was saying there was an incentive for ones that were doing the job well, but I think it's a hard.
Well, I think, and I'm just picking up because I heard the same thing. I think he was talking about some really high, either college kids or somebody really physically capable of coming in and running up and down the rows of teams and doing an adult job of that selective detasseling. And there are inbreds which are shorter than the normal tasseler we work with. And they can come through those because they're at the normal human height, and they can be very selective. And if they're young college kids that are really energetic, and yet capable, why, boy, they can take a team of those and come in to select fields and just do a wonderful job by hand and get back on out and get paid a very, very good salary for it. I think that's what he was referring to. But anyway, good enough?
That's all I need.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for considering it worthy, an old man's going on worthy of recording. I'm just shooting the breeze. But anyway, it is a part of history in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Dad had 1,000 detasseler kids before I was going to high school. He had a grower that had a lot of kids in the area. It's a Mennonite area. I don't think I'd want to be quoted on that. That's not a good connotation, but Mennonite and Catholic. And it was up area north of York. And he got 1,000 kids to detassel some production up there when he found, we used to sell seed corn way back then. That's what Dad did. He raised little bits of seed corn and sold it locally. And he had a farmer up there that was irrigating out of one of the rivers up north of York. And it's really good ground up there. York County has always been better ground than Fillmore County ground anytime. And of course, he had a seed business in York, so he knew a lot of those people up there. Anyway, when it became possible, Dad knew from selling these seeds in the East that seed corn was a good thing if you could just get a bunch of it produced. And lo and behold, here were these people who had a lot of kids, good, hard-working kids, and it rained up there all the time. It didn't need irrigation wells like it does down here. And I don't know how many acres he had, but he had 1,000. I suppose he'd have to have about between 400 and 500 acres of production, and that was unheard of back then. Unheard of by any major seed company. But he saw all that and put it together, and he had said several times he had over 1,000 acres. I guess it was over 1,000 acres. He had a kid per acre. But it only happened for a year or two. Back in the early 40s, that was, I don't think Pioneer had that anywhere. And I don't know what he did, but I think he sold the seed corn to his seed dealer contacts in the East, which is where corn was grown. Hell, you couldn't sell the production off of 1,000 acres anywhere in Nebraska that I know of. They didn't have the water to produce it. Anyway, it's been an interesting period in my life. I would sure as hell wouldn't want to go through it again.
Once is enough.
If you go through the top part and not the bottom, that'd be all right. But there's a lot of interesting sidelights, but I lost with the antiquity of everything else. But sometimes I'm surprised at myself because Louise tells me this from time to time. I'll talk about people and periods and what went on that are indicative of the area, but not too relevant to most people. And yet they're an integral part of the history of this area. And not that anybody would care at all. That's just, so it's not in my mind worth preserving verbatim, but it's
quite interesting. Yeah.
it's been fun.
I think that's how I knew.
And it's created a living for us. I don't know where in the hell the boys are going with what you saw this afternoon.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there's some technology there in production that boy, I don't know where in the hell they found an outlet for as many acres as they grew this year of seed production. And
It seems like they're taking over the scale of what NC Plus was as a cooperative.
oh,
You know, because they're selling.
it's way beyond. I don't want to sound, but it's way beyond that. First of all, NC Plus never produced that many acres with all their growers.
Yeah.
Secondly, Paul, we're talking about, and I have trouble getting my hands around this, but we're talking about producing on inbreds that are much more tough to get to produce a decent ear with decent quality corn on it. And that takes a takes a very high, sophisticated way of production, and they don't have perfect production on everything because of it, but it's the average. Well, the large companies have farmers grow most of their ground because they don't own ground, and they look it over pretty carefully before they decide to put seed parent on it to increase. But there's only so much bottom ground, or there's only so much highly productive ground in and around certain areas. My point is, they have to be able to get the highest yield off of their low producing inbreds in order to make it worthwhile to spend, first of all, the cost of the seed, and secondly, all the hand pollination and the hand work that goes into creating some of these things. And we're talking about inbred fields, in other words, not straight seed production like the boys are doing, but inbred fields. And that, Jesus, that's expensive to produce that seed. It's bought by the kernel. And in order to make it simple, it's so many thousand kernels. And they may pay several $100s, 1,000 kernels. Yee, Christ, you know. Well, that gets it up to where it makes some of this stuff possible to do for it, if it's worth that valuable. But that's some of the things that they're being asked to produce, is some more seed stock for other companies. That's what some of these inbreds are.
Yeah.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, was an interview with my grandfather, the great Wendell Lauber. And there's one other piece of footage of his that survives to this day that also features my great-grandfather, Herb Lauber. So here we are, folks, without further ado. This is from, I believe, the late 1950s. I know it's from the late 1950s. I'm not sure the exact year, but anywho, let's go.
Here's another good crop of milo, this one being grown for certified seed on the Lauber Brothers farm. Mr. Lauber, we hear that you've been irrigating for years.
Yes, I have. Was one of the first to irrigate here in Fillmore County. My first well went down way back in 1938. It was a shallow well, and we used open ditch methods only. Through the years, we have gradually improved our methods and switched to deep wells, gated pipe, and sprinkler systems. By the way, you know I have been retired for a number of years, so why not let me call one of my two sons to come over here and finish the story. Wendell, come over here a minute, please. Wendell, I've been telling these gentlemen about how we got started in irrigation. Will you finish the story for them?
Sure, Dad. We grow and sell certified seed, and the first planting each year just has to grow. That's why we irrigate throughout the growing season. We irrigate regularly, and not the supplemental treatment that some people use. We make it a full-time job. In fact, I don't think we could stay in business if it wasn't for the good supply of water we have. Do you, Dad?
No, I don't, son. Water and irrigation are a necessary part of our lives. They are the basis of our economic structure.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that was my grandfather and great-grandfather. Now, we're going to turn back to something. This was published shortly after Roe v. Wade. And this is from the guest from earlier this evening, Nate Dallon. He wrote an article on Roe v. Wade, and I do a reading of that article and then give a quick reaction. So I'm curious how much of his predictions actually came to fruition. So without further ado, let's get right into On Roe v. Wade by Nate Dallon. Oh, wow, my old intro. This is really old school. The glasses of extreme are coming on here. Yes,
Whoa.
yes. Because this is an article
Yes.
written by
Yes.
the one, the only, Nathan C. Dallon. Now, for those who don't know, he is an immigration attorney out of Omaha, Nebraska. As Jim Cornette would say, he's an attorney so good he could get sodomy charges dropped to just tailgating. Okay, he is one of the great legal big minds you should listen to. He and I have had disagreements in the past, but I do enjoy his perspective. And this is a article he gave me permission to read live on stream to you beautiful people. This is Nathan C. Dallon. Quick thoughts on Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade. Oof, this is a complex one. Earlier this week, a draft majority decision was leaked to Politico on the case of Mississippi versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. The decision is authored by Justice Samuel Alito. It's a majority opinion, and the leaker indicated that 5 justices have joined the majority opinion, namely Justices Kavanaugh, Barrett, Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, Breyer, and Kagan have all dissented. The Chief Justice, John Roberts, has not yet decided, according to the leaker. The draft majority opinion rests on one sentence. Quote, "We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled." Chief Justice Roberts confirmed the authenticity of the draft opinion. This is unprecedented and leads to a number of clear and unclear consequences. 1. Clear legal consequences. The federal constitution no longer conveys a right for an abortion to individuals. It is now up to the individual states to determine access to abortion. Trust between clerks, justices, and court staff at the Supreme Court must be at a 150-year low. I have no insider information, but the private deliberations surrounding decisions between justices and their teams is a critical pillar in the Supreme Court's decision-making process. That trust has been shattered. The legitimacy of the court has been called into question. Justice Sonia Sotomayor asked during oral arguments on the Mississippi noted that Mississippi decided to pass a restrictive law because, quote, "we have new justices," end quote. That observation led her to ask, quote, "will this institution survive the stench that this creates in the public perception that the Constitution and its readings are just political acts? I don't see how it is possible," end quote. Number 2, unclear legal consequences. Will the overturning of Roe result in a wave of new cases asking the Supreme Court to overturn other long-held decisions? Does the majority opinion open the door to possible attacks on fundamental rights that are not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution? More particularly, are gender rights, sexual rights, and issues around the right to contract now open for reinterpretation? Think gay marriage, non-discrimination accommodation laws, protected class of gender, sexual orientation. Will the majority hold? Now the leak has happened. Will the 5 justices stick to their opinion, or will the outcry over the decision cause someone to change their vote? 3, ethical and moral considerations. There are deeply held beliefs about life, dignity, autonomy, and choice in the U.S. The cultural arguments surrounding abortion have been deep and intense since before Roe. The different perspectives seem to be irreconcilable. The choice camp. A deeply held belief that the creation of life is an unequal experience. The consequences of sexual relationships don't equal divide between male and female. Women bear an unequal burden of the consequences of a sexual encounter. A male may have a brief sexual encounter and walk away without even knowing the consequences of his action. Women experience the same moment entirely differently and could carry with them the consequences of such an encounter for a lifetime. Pregnancy is no small thing for women and potentially a total non-issue for a man. The unfairness and burden of being pregnant, birthing a child with all of its risks, and raising a child fall on women. Should a woman have the right to deploy technology after a sexual encounter to control those consequences? The answer for those in the choice camp is yes. A woman in consultation with health professionals should be able to make decisions without interference from the state. The choice camp cannot find an observable moment for when life can be declared to have begun. The overwhelming majority of fertilized eggs never make it past the first 2 weeks. There isn't an observable, workable, and measurable way to declare life begins at conception. The life camp. Life begins at conception and rights attached to the baby long before it develops limbs, eyes, a brain, or a heart. The focus is on the life that is activated at the moment of conception. Abortion ends life and is therefore murder. The unfairness experienced by women is outweighed by the newly created life. Particular care needs to be taken to protect the new life that is, as this baby is in no position to speak out and advocate for itself. The possibility of ending a life merely because it isn't fair to the mother is murderous. The moderate camp. Moderates try to weigh the position of the pro-choice and pro-life camps. Moderates see the unequal distributions of unwanted pregnancies, but also worry about when life begins. Moderates disfavor abortion except in limited instances of rape, incest, in the life of the mother. Moderates don't believe that abortion is murder, but do believe that the state can limit abortion after 21 weeks. Moderates recognize that the moment when life begins isn't knowable, but clearly at 7 months pregnancy, life has happened. For those who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I had a Twitter conversation about the theological consequences for abortions here. The link is given. 4, the political consequences. I don't know. All I know is this. Dems are mad, R's are glad. Those who voted for Trump to get justices to overturn Roe v. Wade have won. Will this matter in the 2022 midterms? I am doubtful. I do think blue states will get bluer and red states will get redder. I love you all. Please be kind to each other on this topic. The world needs more kindness when discussing hard things. Be charitable. Nate Dallon. So there you go, folks.
Well, with that last comment, I guess I'll tone down some of the shit I wanted to call out on there.
Wow.
There's a couple of things in there, like questioning whether like sexual identity rights or even gay marriage, like these are different cases. And I get the premises. Well, would they go and remove these because they don't like it, because they're, scary Republicans? No, that makes no sense to me. That and the basis, and if you actually read it was Alito, right, that released the goddamn, or that had the statement released. Whatever.
It was Alito's statement that was released. He didn't release.
If you go through it, it's like he's been looking at this for a long time, and he goes through every charitable argument that the left could have to keep Roe in place, and says why it's unjustified and why it needs to go. Everything that they have thought of, he's already listed of why that doesn't matter and how the case should never have made it as far as it did. And then like to say that they would just go after gay marriage because they hate the gays, like, oh come on, that's paranoia, that's stupid. And then with the female and sexual identity rights or whatever, like that's in the civil rights of what was that 1967 or whatever when they passed the Civil Rights Act. That's in there. That's in there.
1964. Yeah,
something like that. That's in there. The gender rights is in there. It's already like, you want to get rid of the Civil Rights Act then? Like, it's like that was a dumb argument there.
I'll be honest, like the one line in this that kind of like threw me off, because he's made mentions to this argument on other shows before, is the overwhelming majority of fertilized eggs never make it past the first 2 weeks. Well, we're talking about an entirely different thing there then. We're talking about the difference between, well, you see, I got this blue paint and this yellow paint. Once they combine, they become green paint. But we don't have green paint yet. Okay, once you combine the two things, now you have green paint.
But
once
Phil, you know what? Before that, it was all white paint, and we had
uterine wall. You now have green paint.
But it all started with white paint anyway, so none of it matters.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that always stood out to me in that particular. But I'll let you guys go on before I get into my last objection.
And what was he talking about in the very beginning about shattered trust? The fact that it got leaked? Is that what he thinks was the shattered trust?
Okay. It was Sonia Sotomayor. Her quote is, Will this institution survive the stench that this creates in the public perception that the Constitution and its readings are just political acts? I don't see how that's possible. It's the idea that the legitimacy of the courts now being called into question because it's
No,
going
he
to.
said it was before that. There was a line that said shattered trust specifically. It was before the
Let's
Sonia
see.
Sotomayor.
Okay. Trust between clerks, justices, and court staff at the Supreme Court must be at a 150-year low. I have no insider information, but the private deliberations surrounding decisions between justices and their teams is a critical pillar in the Supreme Court's decision-making process. That trust has been shattered. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it
the
was-
trust
the
The
between.
releasing of the document.
So,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
how much do you want to bet it was released on purpose? Because
Of course.
if they're going to do this and actually overturn Roe v. Wade, if they just came out and said it and didn't like brace for impact, like what do you do before a really big decision comes down? You kind of you just kind of
if we're
turn that
not like
pasta a
paying
little bit.
attention and then like just one morning we wake up, oh shit, they overturned Roe v. Wade. Like,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah,
whoa.
Exactly. That's one of those things that if you don't warm the people up, like that would have been one of those.
And then when it
Well,
happens,
I guess we're putting on the riot gear today, and we're just going to take to the fucking streets. But if you bleed it out just a little bit, little by little,
Think of the
then it's not
clerk.
gonna be bad.
Think of the clerk that's reading this, right? Or being forced to write it, and they're thinking like, "This can't happen," right? So, what can I do? Well, I can leak it, and that will get my base, energized, and maybe try to stop it.
that too, yeah.
So like that's the way I'm looking at it, as far as like, that because I mean, look at if you read that opinion, then it's being overturned. Right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like it's
No
100%.
matter what John Roberts.
Yeah, no, it
thinks,
doesn't matter what Robert
Jennings
says, it's
do.
going to be overturned. So,
Yeah.
so there comes a point where, like, that person doesn't want it to be overturned. So that would be my opinion.
It could
and
be
then-
either.
And then
I think
Phil,
you can make the argument either way that regardless of the intention, like, well, this could prevent it from being overturned, or this could strengthen it being overturned. I think you can make the argument both ways, though, on who leaked it and why.
yeah, I mean, but if it's already being overturned, like it's almost, I mean, if it's almost 100% going to be overturned, then why would that person jeopardize?
Right.
Why would you take the chance? You know what I mean?
I agree with that.
Yeah. So
Because
that-
when
that
they
would
find
be-
out who it is, their legal career's over.
oh yeah, they're done.
I mean,
If-
they might be able to get a gig on MSNBC, but that's about it.
Oh yeah, they're shoe in for like executive VP of CNN. Yeah.
You would co-host a show with Jen Psaki.
But now, like, I've had some debates
back to
back and
that.
forth
Circle
with Nate, really nice guy. He's one of those like Republican types who like voted for Biden in the end because Trump like didn't stand up for the moral issue, like what that kind of stuff. Which I get it, whatever. I don't agree with it because it's like Trump was a fairly moderate Republican president at best.
I don't get
if you
it.
remove his
Like
rhetoric.
Biden's not moral. Like
I was to say,
it's just
there's
like,
plenty of reasons I didn't give my vote to Trump, but his moral standing, that wasn't one of them. What the fuck
he's
does
one of
that
the
even
biggest
mean?
liars like he was one of the biggest liars in the government. Like he
Yeah.
lied about all his degrees.
now-
He lied about
Yeah,
going
he's
to
been lying in
colleges.
Washington
He's
for
been lying. I mean, he said some really awful things. Not to mention, like,
Stolen
Yeah.
speeches.
yeah,
Crime bill.
yeah.
the crime bill. I was just getting the crime bill. I mean,
Now
that-
I will. I only preface that.
Yeah.
I tell you this
I'm
information
just saying, like,
because
moral.
I'm telling you to understand just how much it had to have hurt him to type out the people who voted for Donald Trump have won. That had to just like hurt so hard. Like, oh, ouch. Why? We've always heard like this is the most important election. No, it turns out 2016 was actually the most important election of our lifetime.
Just smooths itself out.
Yes. And turns out my analysis is wow, that is very bright. Turns out my analysis is still correct, folks. I figured I'd try standing up. Wow, it just makes my face turn bright. I got to get a cover on that. Oh, well, folks, we're going to have a little bit more fun. This is Joe Biden on election night. He actually stopped by our show, folks. He totally did. 100%. If you don't believe me, let's check this out. Okay. All right. This was Joe Biden on election night stopping by to give us his take on how it was going.
Ladies and gentlemen,
What a fucking joke.
Ladies and gentlemen, the current president of these United States here to
Or so
weigh
they
in
tell
on
us.
tonight's election coverage. Joe, welcome,
Joe,
welcome
we're-
back
we're
to the
over
show.
here,
How you
Joe.
doing?
Joe,
Yeah,
Joe.
over here,
Over
bro.
here.
Hey, over here. Yeah. I see you. Bang bang. Here, I'm gonna move you so this will be easier. There.
I'm back, baby. How's it going, fellas?
Oh,
good.
Joe. So how's it feel? How's it feel tonight?
This is such a great night. I got to tell you guys, I've been looking forward to this night since the debates. Oh man, it's been a wild ride, but we're finally here. We're building back better, and it's just coming through tenfold.
So Joe, what do you think the chances Kamala's going to win tonight?
Well, I mean, you know, it's 100% because she's my VP. She's stunning brave. She's second most vice presidential, you know, popular and stuff and all that. And you know, she's going to ride my coattails back to a second term.
What? Why did you drop out, Joe?
No, sorry, no, I'm back in here. You guys haven't been on for a while, so I didn't mean to drop. I was waiting for you guys to go live.
No,
Joe.
like dropped out of the presidential race.
What I didn't. I'm right here. I'm campaigning, even here on election night.
So you're running right now.
No, I'm sitting right now. Obviously, Rooster. What are you, fucking blind?
So
This
no,
fucking guy
but
takes
Joe,
months off and he comes at me with a hard ball like that. Fuck, even ABC was throwing me harder softballs than that.
so Joe, I don't know if you remember this or not, but okay. So Kamala
Shoot
Harris. Yes, but Kamala Harris, you really love her, right? You think she's great?
Oh, she's tremendous. She's a
oh,
stunning Indian or black woman.
yes. Now, Joe, okay, so you're singing her praises. She's tremendous. You got nothing but not kind things to say to her, right?
Well, I mean, it's not like you could tell me there's a bad thing I could say about her.
Okay, well, Joe, she actually replaced you. You're not running for president anymore, and she's running for president in your stead. You will not be president after January because of her.
Oh, that's funny right there. You almost got me there, K.O.E.
No.
So she did like what you think Donald Trump did on January 6th. She's actually doing to you.
Killed about 5 million people. Yeah.
Yeah. She's actually doing that to you right now.
No, she's not even here though. Like I'm alone.
But no. Joe, you're not actually running for president.
You released
Rooster. I'm sitting.
So you released a public statement saying that you are not going to seek re-election for presidency, and Kamala is
Whatever
now
I released in public is irrelevant. I'm sorry. You get gassy. If I released it in public, I apologize.
No,
I'm
My
sorry.
God. Okay, Joe, do you remember when you were just a spry, 60 years old? Yeah, true. Like back when you're in your 60s, when LBJ was quitting being president, and he said he will not seek nor accept
Man,
his
back in
party's.
the 60s, I didn't.
back when you used to say the N-word normally.
I did not get that many BJs in the 60s, Phil. I had hairy legs.
Okay. LBJ.
So anyway, Joe, back when you used to say the N-word freely all the time. That's what
LBJ said he would not seek nor accept his party's nomination for the presidency of these United States. And Joe, you've done the same thing. Kamala's taken your spot.
No, she can't do that because that's my move.
She did.
She did.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's fine. No, she just look. I get tired. Okay, I get tired. And I was supposed to go to another debate with old Orange 45, but I got tired. You ever get tired? I get tired. You get tired. So she went over to debate. Here she won. Did amazing. She's even doing cameos on the radio, the AM, I think, and Saturday night, Tuesday live. She's doing great. She's gonna win it back. She's building it back better for a second term Joe Biden. It's gonna be amazing.
No, Joe. She's gonna take your seat. You're not gonna be the president anymore.
I mean, I'll trade a seat with her. I mean, it's just a chair.
I mean, it's the reason she's asking you to the White House and not go campaign for her.
But
Joe,
right.
Joe, instead of talking about Kamala, let's jump over to other elections. How confident?
No,
how
I've been trying
confident?
Blue Chew, but still, so far, nothing. It's not. I'm not getting home.
Not erections,
no.
not erections, Mr. President.
Oh.
So tonight, so far, the Republicans have taken 3 extra House seats and 1 Senate seat. What is that?
Stealing shit when they went into the Capitol on January 6th. They were taking chairs, and they're doing it again on election night.
They're nice chairs.
They are. Lecterns are nice too.
Terrorists.
So,
well, Joe, we have polls closing in 1:30. We're gonna see probably California, Nevada. It's gonna be an exciting moment. It's gonna be an exciting moment for your side.
I'm excited. Look at all that blue. The blue wave. I feel the blue cascading over me right now. Look at that. My God. My God. All the colors of the rainbow. I'm blue, da ba dee da ba do, da ba dee da ba do. What? Wait a minute.
Did you forget to put your contacts in, Joe?
Yeah, hang on now. No, because that ain't.
No, it's not blue.
This doesn't look right, fellers.
Why is that, Joe?
What's going on here?
Well, first of all, can we just show just any old state on the map? Let's show him Georgia, for example. Let's show him Georgia.
Yeah. Show me Georgia. What the hell is that?
Okay, now can you show him the candidates? Justin, our master producer here. There's Donald Trump. Scroll down. There's Chase Oliver, the Libertarian. There's Jill Stein.
Yep.
And then there's Kamala Harris.
Mr. Kamala, what the fuck does that even say?
Mr. Kamala Harris.
What is that?
That's what we're trying to tell you, Joe.
Why would they list the VP?
Because you dropped out.
Excuse me, fellas. This just in California went to Kamala Harris.
Whoa.
I know.
Okay,
Idaho just went for Donald
Mr.
Trump.
Brandon over there in the West Coast. No, it went Joe Biden.
Sorry, sir. It says Kamala Harris.
So Fox
Something's
News just
not right
gave
here.
Washington
This ain't right.
and Oregon to Kamala, and everybody else is holding.
Oh no! Is this Joe finding out in real time that his
if
own
they're
administration
holding,
cooed him?
no, my vice president will put them in prison and probably execute them if they're holding.
Oh, okay.
That's
Shit. Okay.
probably accurate.
That's accurate.
Okay.
Well, I picked her. I mean, you can pick your friends. You can't pick your VP. At least that's what they tell me. I don't know. Hey, there's a knock at my door. I got to check on this.
Joe had to go check something at the door. Hopefully that's
your friends, but you
hopefully
can't.
that's not his handlers getting
At
rid
least
of
that's
him.
what they tell me.
This is the Secret Service.
His handlers are coming to update him.
Look at all that blue.
While we're waiting, Justin, go to Minnesota. I'm curious.
Minnesota, the great state of Minnesota. We got
So
Trump
we're
up to
at
214,
11%. So okay, so Minneapolis hasn't come in yet.
and
Okay.
Harris is at 179 with Washington
So
and
Senate
California.
is +1. So we're at 49 to 42. Republicans taking the lead on the Senate. And it looked like the House picked up 3 more Republican seats that were Democrat before.
You guys
Joe, what?
remember Furbies?
Oh my fucking!
Oh,
Oh no!
I got
why
a
are we
Furby.
why are we doing this?
I got a Furby.
No, no, you shouldn't have one, Joe.
Why are you
I have
wearing
a
that
Furby.
ridiculous hat?
How the hell did that get? I don't know. Look, here's the thing. Where is my neck? What the fuck is going on? Here, you go over here, little guy. Anyway, look.
He'll be up your ass later.
Oh, what? Promise?
Everything's a dildo if you're brave enough.
This is true.
You're not going to do a dramatic cut. Thanks a lot, producer, man. Jesus Christ. Comedic effect and all that. Whatever. Let's just jump the shark. No, we're
Well,
actually
Joe,
gonna
we all
watch
thought you were really
Joe
going to do
Furby
it.
up his ass. The fuck. All right, look. So I'm hearing what you're telling me. What you're telling me is that backstabbing bitch is trying to take my job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She kind of is like
Tempting.
she's pretty goddamn close to it.
No, she's not, because here I am right now to tell you if that's the case. Put me up.
Give him full screen, producer man.
Throw a MAGA
Oh, you
hat
sure leave me on full screen for the Furby up the ass, but you won't put me up here for a fucking speech. Not I'm the fucking president or anything. Give me a break. Come on, man.
Happy birthday, John Ross.
Yeah. Anyway, look, if what I'm hearing is true, and on this most sacred of election nights, Kamala Harris is trying to take my job, your 46th president of the United States, hereby am endorsing Donald J. Trump for the presidency of this United States.
Oh,
Sir, by your actions over the last like 2 months, I thought you already did. But hey, all right, we'll take it.
at least your last act was one to try to save America, Joe. Okay?
That's what I've done for the past 4 years. I put us in
Let's
a
not-
pretty good position.
Let's
I
not
mean,
break your arm jacking yourself off there, Joe. Okay? Let's
I can only do one thing. You want me to shove the Furby up my ass? You want me to jerk off?
All right, folks, the 46th president of these United States, or so they tell us, Joseph R. Biden. Mr. President, as I told
Good luck
the
to you,
entire
sir.
time, enjoy your only term.
I'll be back.
What a fucking
Wow.
joke.
Yeah, so, folks, or so they tell us, the 46th president of these United States.
Yeah.
Now, do you think, like,
that's pretty awesome?
like this one's going to be pretty wild? Now, what I've always said is one of the reasons that Trump has this appeal is that I think the legal cases actually and weirdly helped him. Oh, hey, Tony.
You missed him again. God
missed-
damn it.
Like,
No, I talked to my kids. They were just here. It's fine.
no,
Joe Biden.
was-
Ah,
It's like He-Man and Adam, Bruce Wayne and Batman. You just never seem to find them in the same place.
Can't figure it out.
But anyways, like Tony's often said, like the legal cases kind of heaped sympathy, like Hulk Hogan style, onto Trump to the point where it creates this unknown. So and there we have Joe Biden on election night. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. That's way too bright. There. That's a little better. Not really, actually. There, it's much better. But, well, how are we doing, Nolan? Yes. That's funny. Unfortunately, I don't know if I can read that everywhere, but that's hilarious. Um, Now, this is just a real quick aside. This is my reading of the Gettysburg Address, one of the most impactful and shortest political speeches in American history. It's not even 2 minutes long, but it has an impact. So we're gonna get into the reading of the Gettysburg Address. There we go. Without further ado, the wise words of Abraham Lincoln. 77 ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men living and dead who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world here will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. And that was the very, very famous Gettysburg Address. Now, there's a lesser known speech made by a president by the great Teddy Roosevelt. This is an excerpt from his Man in the Arena speech. And I actually added text to this one, so that's why I'm going to give this one full screen. And so this one is an excellent, excellent speech for anyone that would strive to do. So without further ado, the words of Teddy Roosevelt. The poorest way to face life is with a sneer. There are many men who feel a kind of twisted pride and cynicism. There are many who confine themselves to criticism of the way others do what they themselves dare not even attempt. There is no more unhealthy being, no man less worthy of respect than he who either really holds or feigns to hold an attitude of sneering disbelief towards all that is great and lofty, whether in achievement or in that noble effort which, even if it fails, comes second to achievement. A cynical habit of thought and speech, a readiness to criticize work which the critic himself never tries to perform, an intellectual aloofness which will not accept contact with life's realities. All these are marks, not as the possessor would feign to think of superiority, but of weakness. They mark the men unfit to bear their part painfully in the stern strife of living, who seek in the affections of contempt for the achievements of others to hide from others and from themselves in their own weakness. The role is easy. There is none easier, save only the role of the man who sneers alike at both criticism and performance. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by the dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actively strive to do the deed, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. The words of Teddy Roosevelt. Now, this is going to seem like kind of a strange place to go, but this is a reading of one of the earliest recorded poems. It's by I believe he's an Arab poet by the name of Ferdowsi, and or maybe Persian, and the poem is called Alas, Youth. So this one's an interesting one, and then we're going to get to, well, you'll see. I always love this song. It's very dark, but alluring. How we doing, all y'all? It's time for another poem of the week. This one is a very, very old one by a Persian poet by the name of Ferdowsi. This one is a man in his 60s, basically going over regret in life over bygone youth. So despite the tremendous amount of time that's passed from the writing of this poem to my reading today, these are words that are still just as true today. So here we go, folks. Much have I labored, much read o'er, of Arabic and Persian lore, collecting tales unknown and known. Now 62 years are flown. Regret and deeper woe of sin, 'tis all that youth has ended in. And with mournful thoughts rehearse, by Tahir Khusrauani's verse, I mind me in my youth and sigh, alas for youth gone by. So there you go, folks. Very, very old poem, but one that still seems to be just as true today as the day it was written. So, folks, if there's a poem you'd like me to read, if you'd like me to read your poem, please just let me know in the comments, or in any way you can get a hold of me. I love the imagery of good poetry, folks. So if you've got a poem you'd like me to read, please just drop it in the comments, and I will catch you folks for another poem of the week. Later, y'all. Excellent, excellent. But folks, we're at a very special time this evening where I'm going to do something, as I'm known to say around here. All that being said, thank you for joining us this evening for this very interesting discussion. Now, folks, while this may be the tail end of tonight's entertainment, there's still a little bit more entertainment to go yet. Worry not. Because what we're going to leave you with this evening is my performance of the Mark Antony speech from Julius Caesar, written by one William Shakespeare. So worry not, folks. You are going to get a tremendous piece of entertainment on the way out. And this will be how we conclude this evening, folks. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. God bless every last one of you. I hope all of you make it back here to the K.O.E. Nation happy, healthy, much the wiser. God bless every last one of you. Travel well. Catch you on the flip side. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do live after them, the good is oft inferred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievous has Caesar answered it. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man, so are they all honorable men. Come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did fill the general coffers. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When that the poor had cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. You all did see that on the leper call, I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and sure, he is an honorable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What caused you to withhold to mourn for him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin there with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me. Yesterday, the word of Caesar might have stood against the world. Now lies he there, and none so poor to do him reverence. O masters, if I were disposed to stir your hearts and minds to mutiny and rage, I should do Brutus wrong and Cassius wrong, who, you all know, are honorable men. I will not do them wrong. I rather choose to wrong the dead, to wrong myself and you, that I will wrong such honorable men. But here, a parchment, the seal of Caesar. I found it in his closet. 'Tis his will. But let the commons hear this testament, which, pardon me, I do not mean to read, and they would go and kiss dead Caesar's wounds and dip their napkins in his sacred blood, yea, beg a hair of him for their memory, and dying mention it within their wills. Bequeath it is a rich legacy unto their issue. Have patience, gentle friends. I must not read it. It is not meet to you to know how Caesar loves you. You are not wood, you are not stone, but men. And being men, bearing the will of Caesar, it will inflame you. It will make you mad. 'Tis good you know not that you are his heirs, for you should, oh, what come of it? Will you be patient? Will you stay a while? I've o'ershot myself to tell you of it. I fear I wrong the honorable men whose daggers have stabbed Caesar. I do fear it. You compel me then to read the will, and make a ring about the corpse of Caesar, and let me show you him that made the will. Shall I descend? And will you give me leave? If you have tears, prepare to shed them now. You all don't know this mantle. I remember the first time Caesar ever put it on. 'Twas a summer's evening in his tent. The day overcame the nervii. Look at this place. Ran Cassius' dagger through. See what a rent the envious Casca made. Through this, the well-beloved Brutus stabbed, and he plucked his cursed steel away. Mark how the blood of Caesar followed it, as rushed out the doors to be resolved, if Brutus so unkindly knocked, oh no. For Brutus, as you know, was Caesar's angels. Judge, oh God, how dearly Caesar loved him. This was the most unkindest cut of all. For when noble Caesar saw him stab, ingratitude more strong than traitor's arms, quite vanquished him, and then burst his mighty heart, and in his mantle muffled up his face, even at the base of Pompey's strata, to which while ran blood, great Caesar fell. Oh, what a fall there was, my countrymen! Then I, you, and all us fell down, whilst bloody treason flourished over us. Oh, you weep, and I perceive you fell the dint of pity. These are gracious drops, kind soul. What? Weep you when you but behold our Caesar's vestule. Look ye here! Here he is, marred as you see with traitors. Stay, countrymen. Good friends, sweet friends, let me not stir you up to such a sudden flood of mutiny. These that have done these deeds are honorable. What private griefs they have, alas, I know not. That made them do it. They are wise and honorable, and will no doubt with reasons answer you. I come not, friends, to steal away your hearts. I am no orator, as Brutus is, but as you know me all, a plain, blunt man that loved his friend, and that they know full well that gave me public leave to speak of him. For I have neither wit, nor words, nor worth, action, nor utterance, nor power of speech to stir men's bloods. I only speak right on. I tell you that which you yourselves know. Show your sweet Caesar's wounds, poor dumb mouths, and bid them speak to me. But were I Brutus and Brutus Antony, there were an Antony would ruffle up your spirit and put a tongue in every wound of Caesar that should move the stones of Rome to rise and mutiny. You hear me, countrymen, yet hear me speak. My friends, you go to do you know not what. Wherein hath Caesar thus deserved your loves? Alas, you know not. I must tell them. You have forgot the will I told you of. Here is the will, and under Caesar's seal, every Roman citizen he gives, every several man, 75 drachmas. Hear me with patience. Moreover, he has left you his walks, his private arbors, and new planted orchards on this side river Tiber. He has left them you and your heirs for ever common pleasures, to walk abroad and recreate yourself. Here was Caesar, when comes such another? That was wonderful. That was wonderful. But I decided we're going to end tonight on scripture. Okay. And this is Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem from the Gospel of Mark. Without further ado, let's get right into it. And this will be the end of tonight's entertainment. God bless all y'all. Travel well. A reading from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 11, verses 1 through 11. Now, when they drew near to Jerusalem, to Bethphage and Bethany at the Mount of the Olives, Jesus sent two of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the village in front of you, and immediately as you enter it, you will find a colt tied, on which no one has ever sat. Untie it and bring it. If anyone says to you, 'Why are you doing this?' say, 'The Lord has need of it, and will send it back here immediately.'" And they went away and found a colt tied to a door outside in the street, and they untied it. And some of those standing there said to them, "What are you doing untying the colt?" And they told them what Jesus had said, and they let them go. And they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks on it, and he sat on it. And many spread their cloaks on the road, and others spread leafy branches that they had cut from the fields. And those who went before and those who followed were shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord! Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David! Hosanna in the highest!" And he entered Jerusalem and went into the temple. And when he had looked around at everything, as it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. Thus ends the reading of God's holy